call and check in. I know Dead by Daylight isn't in a good state right now. The devs don't care as much as they should. The spaghetti coding causes a lot of bugs and leaves room for hackers. The matchmaking is pretty unbearable, and don't even get me started on the balance. But since I know that things have been pretty rough, I've called in a friend to help you get through it, and hopefully provide an adequate solution.
9 years. It's been 9 years since Dead by Daylight was released, and for the past 9 years, this game has been unbalanced, full of bugs, predatorily monetized, and filled with players on both sides that get screwed over by not only the imbalance of DBD, but also the lack of love behavior has for this game. The community is also more toxic than Fiznom's cesspit. Now you may be wondering why some bear who talks about superheroes all day in his mother's basement is talking about a horror game made by shitty developers, and to answer that question, I'm going to need my glasses for this one. Unlike the absolute scumbags at behavior, I actually love the game Dead by Daylight and want to see it improve, even if I have to make those changes myself. And to do this, I will be going down the rabbit hole of every single problem I think is holding this game back, and will be solving it single-handedly, starting with the biggest problem for this game.
7 minutes. 7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
Now I could go on and on about how much I hate behavior and insult them for what they've done to this game, as well as point out every single flaw I can find in how they've handled Dead by Daylight, which is exactly what I'm going to do since I have about 10 pages worth of material. So skip to this timestamp if you don't want to hear a 7-minute roast of a multi-million-dollar corporation still acting like they only have $100 to their name with how incompetent they are. Now I know there was that Chandler Riggs livestream and a couple of other things too, but I'm not going to mention them in this video, because frankly, I won't need to. If I wanted to tell you the viewer why behavior is an incompetent, inept, intensely avaricious, and borderline cancer to Dead by Daylight's existence, then I'd tell you to play the game for about a week and then get back to me. Like honestly, if you looked up the word incompetent, Behavior's logo will be an example of the definition. Because how the hell do you still have all of these problems 9 years later? Behavior really looked at the massive laceration that is their game and said, yeah, let's just put a band-aid on that. If Behavior ran a college class teaching incompetence, they'd have a sea of negative reviews because the students wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the options positive or negative in the review tab. If Scott John ever made a softball interview with the devs at Behavior, they would somehow fail it massively and possibly say the N-word. Behavior is the type of guy that has the perfect idea for a video game, yet the worst possible maintenance I have ever seen in my entire life, and I've only been alive for 20 years. And no, that game doesn't count, because at least Concord died. Dead by Daylight is in a state of living that would be considered one of the fates worse than death. Horrible, wasted potential that goes unnoticed because its own creators don't know what the word love actually means. It's a fate I'd wish on Behavior, but they already seem to be living it. They're incompetent as fuck when it comes to balancing this game. They have no idea what they're doing, so whenever they make a new change they just look like Charlie. Behavior fumbled the bag so hard that they couldn't even make their own game competitive. It's just as much of a laughingstock as every appearance on almost every live stream they do, where you know they're sweating bullets because they don't know how to solve their problems, so they just go with the flow and say some stupid shit like this.
An opinion, a valid opinion, but that's an opinion. I used to love playing as a killer, win or lose it was fun, but currently no matter what it's just filled with stress and anger. Killers aren't feared anymore. Do you have any plans or ideas how you would like to improve the killer experience? Well, I would say maybe try Survivor for a bit. No, but it's true. I mean, change it up. Maybe you're just tired, you know, or play something else for a week. Try Civilization or something, just for a refreshing change.
And still have the goal to say, I think we've done a pretty good job so far, twice.
I think we've done a pretty good job so far.
Oh, yes.
Hey, by the way, did you know that the guy who said that was Matthew Cote? You know, the same guy who got his cheeks spread by some survivors, like some unlucky guy in the prison shower who dropped the soap? Yeah, turns out his incompetence translates very well from his own business to his gaming. Hell, I bet you could say that about a lot of employees at Behavior, such as Mandy for example, who are clearly inept about how their own game actually works. And speaking of ineptitude, I honestly doubt that anyone watching this video will be just as stupid as Behavior, because how low does your IQ have to be to think that implementing Survivor and Killer rulebooks into a party game that you're trying to make competitive but doing a poor job at was a good idea? Don't answer that. I already had ChatGPT do it for me and they called Behavior retarded, although I think retarded would be the wrong word to use, as Machiavellian fits way more with Behavior, as their Patrick Star level of stupidity doesn't come without a modicum of intelligence. I personally have a feeling that their level of intelligence intelligence is enough to know that you can make more money by not doing anything about it than to actually solve the problem. And if you're just as slow as behavior, then let me spell it out for you. In my opinion, I think behavior makes these stupid changes and says these stupid statements on purpose so that people will criticize them for it, instead of criticizing them for the fact that more than half of the problems on this list can be traced back to them. Think about it. They'll say, I think we've done a pretty good job so far, right as a large portion of their community face hackers DDoSing them and actually putting them on hit lists, with one of them literally hacking the report button so that everyone else will make fun of them, putting that clip right next to the most obscene thing you'll ever see in Dead by Daylight, except for that one guy in the back that goes, well wait a minute, if you've done a good job then why do we still deal with the same problems? Of course I could be wrong, but just remember, Mr. Beast got away with arguably the biggest controversy in his career by simply not responding to Dogpack 404. If one man could get away with that, then don't you think a multi-million-dollar corporation could do something similar? Especially when they still haven't nerfed the most unfair killer in the game despite 4/5 of the community practically begging for it. Oddly enough, she's also one of the free characters in the game you start out with, which leads me and many others to think that the only reason behavior hasn't nerfed her is because they know their game is pay to win. So if they have the most unfair killer free, then they have the excuse that it's not pay to win. I mean, after all, if we implement pride charms into our game, have a canonically gay character, and even release a dating sim that was supposed to be just a joke and nothing more, surely they won't start asking and even rightfully blame us for the state that the game and the community is in, right? Again, this is just my opinion. If behavior was willing to take Towsie's Twitch shirts over his very fair criticism towards one of their devs, then what do you think they'll do to a nobody with less than 500 subs? Behavior's greedy as fuck too. Hey, let's incorporate a battle pass into a game that you already had to pay for. Oh, and let's not forget making a good chunk of the roster pay to play as well. Say what you want about Fortnite, but at least it's free to play, and actually does their licenses justice more often than not. Meanwhile, behavior is too money hungry to properly price the perks within the Shrine of Secrets. Don't worry, I'll go more in depth on that later. Video Horror Society is a textbook example of how greed can not only destroy a beloved video game, but also the reputation of the developers who made it. And Dead by Daylight is a lot closer to that path than you may think. Behavior is a multi-million-dollar corporation yet requires you to pay around $20 just to play the game that's heavily unbalanced, riddled with hackers, and on top of that, the most fun killers and perks are locked behind another paywall. Behavior is the type of guy to use some thought to flirt with an autistic boy to convince him to give them $100 a month? Jesus, why did I write that? Wait, I know why. Because behavior is such a scumbag that if they were caught scamming their player base, then I wouldn't be surprised. You know, behavior is a lot like the Trump administration in a sense. The Trump administration will talk about being transparent, with the Don himself stating that he'd release the Epstein files, and then criticize a reporter who questions his staff on why the files haven't been released yet.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would you,
I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you know, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Meanwhile, behavior will say that they're listening to the feedback of the player base, yet implement changes and mechanics that 1/5 of the player base begged them not to do.
We tried to listen, is what I'm saying.
Anyway, but my overall view is to hell with people that have been playing this game for years. Who cares? You know, we have to protect the new players. And if we got to give base kit unbreakable, anti-tunneling to the max and stuff like that, then by all means, money talks.
And before you say that listening to 1/5 of the player base and not the 4/5 is stupid, just remember that blacks used to be the minority in America. And hell, with how behavior treats the players that play killer, you would think you're one of my fucking ancestors on the plantation. Shit feels more miserable than having my nuts be put into a vice and twisted. And Survivor is less so, only because you can at least have some company to share your misery with. Having to play against legitimately unfair mechanics gets exhausting, and makes you want to go to Home Depot to buy some rope and a chair. For recreational purposes, of course. I wouldn't know, I haven't played since like May of 2024, but I'm sure they do if you only play Survivor. Also, before I forget, you see this tab in the custom game lobby that allows you to switch to Survivor? Add that into the base game as well, because I shouldn't have to waste 3 clicks just to play a different role. This is a clear sign that Behavior doesn't even respect the time of their own players, despite how much they've given them in both money and time. Motherfuckers like Pro Vengeance remind me exactly why women avoided me during my red pill rage. And God forbid River Server starts giving me advice on how to be likable to both your peers and women that aren't desperate. Now Spook and Jukes may be asking, what do those two have to do with Behavior? And to that, I'd like to give you a mirror because I have the same question. Guess you could say they just caught a stray. At least now someone knows how Pig felt when Behavior took her lunch money, kicked her grandma down the stairs, and shoved her into a locker. All unprovoked, by the way, but it wouldn't be the first time Behavior has made unwanted advances and updates to their game that no one asked for. Shout out to the Me Too movement. I mean shit, Behavior's got me bugging more than a crack addict who now has to get their hands on a new supplier. And speaking of supplies, Behavior clearly lacks the supplies in the love department. Otherwise they would have fixed the various bugs and problems in this game that make it so infamous. Of course that would require them to actually love this game as much as they say they do. They're fucking delusional for thinking that they deserve the labor of love reward when they constantly prove time and time again that they don't actually love their game or even respect their community of content creators with every action they make. I deserve that award more than Behavior just for making this video alone. Also, did you know Tim the Tatman said this about NetEase and Marvel Rivals?
Is this what it's like to have developers that like really want the game to succeed? That's a bit toxic. I'm sure Overwatch and other games want them to succeed. Maybe the word I'm looking for is like in tune with the community and pumping out good content. I don't know.
Yeah, funny how I've never heard a similar statement be said about Behavior in Dead by Daylight, although I guess I can't criticize them too much. The devs actually do love the game. I mean, it's the only reason their game hasn't gone to shit like Video Horror Society, despite being just as bad. Really puts into perspective just how shitty, incompetent, and borderline retarded people can still be successful despite the amount of problems their most popular game has. Although I shouldn't really be surprised when Jake Paul exists. And before you say it, yes, listening to It's Everyday Bro is a much better experience than ever playing Dead by Daylight, and that's if everything is right. Hell, at this point, you could say that the relationship between Behavior and the player base is like a battered woman going back to her abusive husband. And despite how toxic the community is, and how much they fucking complain about it placed out in a goddamn video game, they're the woman in this little love scenario. Behavior is a company full of lying sexist shit whose IQ is probably the equivalent to the temperature of your average bathroom. I should honestly applaud Behavior. They made a game with such an interesting idea, but have such a shitty way of maintaining that level of success, you would think they were a one-hit wonder that just realized they're here to stay. Behavior is just a massive bitch at this point. And do you know what else is massive? Not me, because I'm currently roasting Behavior to the shade of my avatar's skin color. Fucked up part is, I'm not even trying. You know, if there was one image I could use to explain who and what Behavior is, it would be this one. Behavior is such a clown show of a company that the only good thing you can say about them is that they made this game. Because you couldn't say any of the text currently on screen with a straight face. I remember back in the day how I would watch C-Day all the time, and would wait impatiently for his next upload. But in all honesty, if Behavior were to pull a C-Day and completely abandon their game, then it will probably be the best thing they've ever done for it. After all, it would stop them from adding more shitty updates, which is practically almost every update they add, by the way. Oh, did I? I didn't even notice because of how passionate I get over a game that I love. Now, if only Behavior loved this game as much as me, all of these problems would be solved in 2 years max. Like I swear to the God that doesn't exist. My body is made up of 206 bones, yet if the word hate was engraved on each millimeter of those bones, it would not equal 1/1,000,000th of the hate I feel for Behavior and what they've done to this game. Fuck you, Behavior. Heartfelt. People constantly say that the unbalance of Dead by Daylight is what's killing it, while others would say the toxicity of entitled survivors who hate playstyles in a video game for free are what's killing it, but both of those groups would be wrong. What's really killing Dead by Daylight is Behavior themselves. Every single problem in this game that I've listed here can be traced back to Behavior's incompetence, ineptitude, and intense avariciousness, which is exactly why I spent the last 10 minutes practically taking a fat shit on Behavior's name. Half of these problems on screen right now shouldn't even be here, and the other half should have already been solved by year 3. The game is 9 years old after all. By the way, did you know that a human child can adapt to a new environment within a few weeks to a year? Which would mean that behavior is worse at adapting than a child would be. That's fucking rich. Behavior is a corporation made up of greedy, incompetent, stupid, and downright nefarious people who are only successful because their twisted sense of love for Dead by Daylight outmatches the greed in their hearts. And since I clearly love this game more than the actual developers, I'll be solving every single problem with this game. Since I'm not behavior, you don't have to pay to play. Or in this case, pay to watch me do it. More on that later. Don't worry, I've spared you from the cuck chair. Unfortunately, Oddsdarva and Chandler Riggs had to suffer through it due to behavior's own negligent and incompetent attitude when it comes to hackers. Yeah, but I never said I wouldn't make jokes about it. Now I understand I'm not a game developer and never will be, but I can say for a fact that anyone, and I mean anyone, can come up with better solutions for these problems than anything behavior has already done. And since this might be the only time I get to mention it, back when I was really grinding this game before I quit, I had a 69 to 73% kill rate. This was me only playing one killer, a rotation of 5 to 8 perks, none of them being gem perks or exposed status effect perks by the way, and only using brown and green add-ons. Now you may be asking why I'm shamelessly self-glazing, and no, it's not because I want to prove how superior I am to behavior in every way, which isn't hard by the way. All I'd have to do is show my profile pic side by side with behavior's logo. The reason is because when I introduce every idea and solution I have, you now know it's from a place where the words competence, skill, and knowledgeable actually mean something. So allow me to prove that in this video, starting with the first problem.
I said, okay, my infatuation interrelating to another form of what you call it. But oh yeah, I ain't met you. I've been looking, stop that waiting for. I stop that chasing like an alcoholic. Now you don't understand me. What the fuck do you mean? It's them rose in the cheeks and it's them dirt color eyes. Sugar, honey, iced tea, bumblebee on the scene. Yeah, I give up my bakery to have a PC of pie.
Now you may be wondering why my first step to fixing this game is about spaghetti coding and not nerfing the fucking nurse. Well, it turns out when your game is spaghetti coded, it's more likely to have bugs and a ton of hackers in it. And what was Dead by Daylight most known for again? I wonder. Also, one of the hackers in Dead by Daylight was live streaming themselves hacking the game, and when you would go to report them, a message would pop up instead. Yeah, you heard me right. This guy was able to hack the report button.
But this person in this video has been hacking and streaming for like a year and nothing's been done. You have literally hackers that taunt people when they say they're gonna report them. I had somebody, I said I was gonna report them. They're like, well, good luck. Ralph told me the same thing and I'm still here. Like, these people can hack the game and have no consequences. DBD has a report button option at the end of the game that does nothing. The crazy thing about it, their report button is so flawed that the hacker in this video hacked the report button that when you go to click it, he changed it to prompt a comment, bro. In what game can you hack the report button? Oh, I think I saw a little bit of something. I think that was a little... Yep, he's hacking. Yep, there it goes. There it goes. You're right. This is a hacker. Yep, here it is.
DBD, do you know how bad your game is where somebody can stream themselves hacking? Do you know how bad your game sucks when a mother trucker can stream themselves clearly hacking? All of this is going on YouTube. I'm not, what's the point? What's the purpose of reporting him? Nothing's gonna happen. Nothing is gonna happen. Man wants the world to know he's hacking because guess what? It's nothing's. Look at this. You can't even report. Girls ejaculate. DBD, what is your game?
Now tell me, in what other game does that happen? Hell, I don't think Roblox has to deal with this bullshit. And that game also has a good amount of hackers too, by the way. The lack of spaghetti coding would also limit the amount of DDoS attacks that would happen too, which was a massive problem for the game at one point, making it unsafe for players to actually play after they bought it.
As I'm sure most of you are aware by this point, there has been quite an uprising in cheaters over the last 2 weeks since the most recent update in Dead by Daylight. These hackers primarily target content creators. They specifically go after the ones that have a bit of a larger audience because they try to take their games hostage so that they have to disconnect and get irritated and stuff like that. And they just want that to happen in front of a lot of people. It just gives them some kind of gratification, makes them feel good. They're just a bunch of trolls. I'm sure regardless of which Dead by Daylight streamers you watch on Twitch, you've probably been seeing them have to deal with these hackers. Now, as we've learned, these hackers have a Discord server where they all gather and sort of talk and decide who they're going to stream snipe and target on whatever particular day or time. They also have spreadsheets with all the streamers they're targeting, along with their Steam IDs and their Dead by Daylight accounts, whether it be on console or PC. And there's a content creator by the name of Choi who actually interviewed one of these hackers, and it's very interesting, and you can get more sort of an in-depth look at how that goes down from a hacker's perspective. I definitely recommend checking that out. Now, Choi is the one who shared this image that you've seen in the thumbnail, where it shows that I am apparently the only content creator that has 3 slots on the Stream Sniper list. Now, what this means is they have 3 different accounts associated to my name that they're ready to stream snipe at any point while I'm streaming.
Some flaw in DBD's system was making it easy for somebody to be able to queue up in somebody's lobby and get their IP. We had a streamer from the DBD community that literally got swatted because of DBD's flaws, bruh. Somebody got swatted because of how easily it was for a hacker to come through in this game and get somebody's IP address. You mean to tell me on top of this bullcrap that I'm not even safe playing this game?
But you can tell. I look up this person's account and I realize that they have multiple accounts. None of them are their main, so they have multiple alternative accounts, right? Some of them are banned recently. Why would you get banned recently? All right. And then when I check their socials and I see their YouTube, they literally have a banner that calls themselves, they self-proclaim themselves as Stream Sniper. You just can't make this stuff up, honestly. Like, you just can't make it up. But yeah, before I ramble and go off the rails, the main point that I'm trying to make here is that I don't feel safe playing Dead by Daylight on stream. On top of having to look out for malicious snipers, I need to look out for hijacking cheaters, for subtle cheaters that make me mistrust everything and everyone. And if that wasn't enough, a couple weeks ago, after I played with the cheater, my IP got compromised and it looks like I got DDoS attacked. My stream completely imploded and I had to call the day off until I sorted it out. This also happened to some other streamers. I found out sometime after that this might be the same IP leak problem that affected streamers last year. You guys remember?
Also, don't forget the fact that it's harder to change the maps and the powers of killers if your game is spaghetti coded. Now do you see why I wanted to tackle this problem first? It's practically the second main thing stopping me from solving every other problem this game has. Of course, solving a problem like spaghetti coding would take a good amount of time to do, but it is possible. And for a game like Dead by Daylight, this problem has to be solved sooner rather than later. As the more chapters and characters come out, the more the bugs will get worse. Now I understand that people want to play this game every day, and wouldn't like being forced to not play the game for a certain period of time. But think about it like this. You have 2 options, the blue pill and the red pill. The blue pill, the game is spaghetti coded, you chose not to solve it, and in return, you play the game whenever you want, just as normal. But the catch, you'll have to deal with the amount of bugs and hackers that come with not solving the spaghetti coding, as well as not being able to solve the very problems you complain about most depending on the role you main. The red pill, the game is spaghetti coded, you choose to solve it, and as a price, you have to wait at least 3 to 5 years to play it again because fixing spaghetti coding takes time. Although you're guaranteed to have a better time playing now that you won't have to deal with the bugs and hackers as much as before. So with the blue pill in one hand and the red pill in the other, which option would you pick? Of course, this doesn't have to be the only 2 options after all. Grok was able to give me a plan that would work. The real question is if Behavior is willing to do the work to prove that they not only love the game as much as they say they do, but also prove that they actually do listen to the community and their feedback, however insulting it may be.
I came to this strange world hoping I could learn a bit about how to give and take. This is
Dead by Daylight. It's no secret that matchmaking in PvP games matters a lot and can make or break a game and its fanbase. But riddle me this, what do you get when you have matchmaking so bad that the best player in the lobby is not the one that's winning? Well, the answer to that is you get survivors that teabag at the exit gates thinking they did something when this was their gameplay and this was the shit they brought. All jokes aside, the matchmaking in Dead by Daylight is a fat, steaming pile of shit that you would find on Rule 34 under the tag scat. It's so bad that it would make me feel constipated and give me diarrhea just from playing it for more than 2 minutes. And that's just the time it would take me to queue up into a lobby, by the way. And if you think I'm exaggerating, just go check right now to see if Otstarva is live and ask him point blank whether or not the best player in a match of Dead by Daylight is always the one that's winning. Trust me, he has a lot of experience when it comes to the players in this game abusing its poor balance in their favor. The funny thing here is, I'm mostly doing this not just to prevent borderline unfair matchmaking, but also to prevent people who smurf as killer and make content out of it too.
First perk is Hex, Huntress Lullaby. Survivors receive a 6% regression penalty to repairs and healing when they miss a skill check. On top of that, each time a survivor is hooked, you gain a token. Tokens 1 through 4 make skill check noises shorter and more difficult to hit. In F5 tokens, the skill check sound is completely removed. And yes, this applies to jigsaw boxes. Up next is Hex.
This doesn't apply to jigsaw boxes. Well, why are you even putting it there? Well, why would you do that? It doesn't apply to jigsaw boxes. That's a bug that some people, including this video, just take advantage of. Why would you say that it applies to jigsaw box auras when it doesn't? Why would you say it applies to the boxes? Why would you even say that? This isn't true. Why would you name your video this as well? Why do all the people of this form keep doing this, bro? Is this why I keep getting asked about Huntress Lullaby?
Huh, I guess you were right earlier about the stuff that killers have as an unfair advantage besides the nurse. So how do you solve this? Well, first you take out skill-based matchmaking and MMR and replace it with matchmaking pools where people will only play others who are in the same rank. Red ranks will go against red ranks, Ash ranks will go against other Ash ranks, so on and so forth. Basically, the idea is to go back to the old ranking system but with some slight tweaks. The first one is specifying what actually qualifies as a win and as a loss, both for survivors and killers. For survivors, a win is a 3-out or a 4-out, regardless of whether you actually escaped or not. On the flip side, only a 4K is considered a win for a killer. I will not be counting 3Ks as a win. 2Ks and 2-outs will be considered as a draw and won't affect your rank. 3Ks for killers will be considered a close match. 4Ks for killers equal 3 pips, 4-outs for survivors will equal 2 pips, 3-outs for survivors will equal 1 pip, and 3Ks for killers will equal 1 pip. As for why killers get 3 pips and survivors only get 2 despite getting the same result, the reason is because survivor is the easy roll, plain and simple. The pip system will obviously act the same way as it does now. The second tweak is implementing the de-ranking system that you see in Marvel Rivals, where you lose your current rank after losing 3 matches in a row. I also think implementing another rank would also be good, just to keep the changes consistent with the actual flow of the game, hence the diamond ranks, which will be before red ranks, but after gold ranks. The rewards will be 600k blood points for diamond 4, 650k for diamond 3, 700k for diamond 2, and 750 for diamond 1. Naturally, this also means adjusting the rewards for red ranks, which will be listed on screen right now. Idiots that either work at behavior or glaze them tirelessly would look at these numbers and say they're problematic. They actually think it's a problem for players to have more blood points when 50k blood points is the equivalent of $50. It's not a lot of money, let's be real. As for the stats showcase, just have a player history / career tab similar to Marvel Rivals that's visible for everyone to see. This is where all of your player stats will be showcased, so you won't have to waste time going to some website and log in just to see how good at the game you actually are. After all, making the player's job easier so they can focus more on winning and having fun is the job of the developers, right behavior? And speaking of making it more convenient to players, let's just remove the DC penalty altogether. It doesn't account for getting held hostage by hackers, or getting disconnected due to either your bad internet connection, the lack of servers in certain regions, or both. And besides, we have survivor bots, so it's not like the DC penalty is even needed. Also, take away the surrender option for both survivors and killers. Not because I want the survivors to know exactly what it feels like when they don't just leave through the exit gates and teabag and point their finger at me, but because it won't be necessary, as each match will now run on a 10-minute timer, not the stupid 1-hour timer that behavior currently has that makes the match feel like forever. Each match will have a 10-minute timer, and if a survivor were to complete a task or an objective, such as completing generators for example, then another minute will be added. This will not only save a player's time and sanity from having to experience certain types of matches, but will also build up the excitement each match has to offer. Of course, it goes without saying, if no survivor escapes before the timer elapses, then it will be an instant win for the killer. But you already knew that. The real question is behavior smart enough to know that too? Also, remove the cap on blood points, it's stupid. Now, it's no secret that every map in this game sucks more dick than Lana Rhoades did in her prime. The maps are so unbalanced that 3 different game mechanics had to be added just to give killers a fighting chance. And only one of these mechanics didn't backfire, by the way. But you'll often see people claim that Macmillan Estate is one of the more balanced maps when that simply isn't the case. Yeah, Macmillan is balanced, but only if you compare it to the other maps, because even by itself, the most balanced version of Macmillan Estate isn't balanced. So to solve this problem with the maps, I'm going to present a rather unorthodox and borderline unethical solution that just might work. My solution to the map problem in Dead by Daylight is to balance every single map in DBD after ETD's The Warehouse map. For context, Escape the Darkness was a Roblox game that was basically Dead by Roblox but infinitely better. You can't play it now because the game shut down, but you can watch videos of other people playing it. I recommend JMT since he had the best coverage of the game. He was basically the Oddstrava of Escape the Darkness. While the balance of ETD was just as bad as DBD, if not arguably worse, not everything was unbalanced, the Warehouse map being one of the few saving graces. So I think modeling every single map in Dead by Daylight to the Warehouse map would be beneficial. So let's start with the map that people claim is pretty balanced. Macmillan Estate is the first map to be added into the game, and fixing it is rather easy, mostly because Ironworks of Misery has a lot of potential to be a fun map to play on, both for survivors and killers. This is how Macmillan Estate Ironworks of Misery should look. It looks a bit messy due to just being a sketch, but I'll try to make it as clear as I possibly can with the captions on screen right now. Also, just to be clear, low walls look like this. Now it's time for me to break down every single aspect of this map. My first step was to remove all of the random shit in the way that clutters these maps. Behavior likes to say it makes the maps richer, but it really just looks bad, and screws over a small portion of the killers. My second note was to change the structure of the map, have both gates be on opposite sides of the map, similar to Midwich, and have the main building always be in the middle, while Killer's Shack remains in one of these 4 corners. For Macmillan, I chose this one. I also limited the amount of pallets to 6 and changed the number of vaults to 16. This means that there will only be 6 pallets and 16 vaults on every single map. Wait, hold up, let me talk. Unlike what TORJ may have told you, map size isn't the issue, or at least it's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is map structure. If a map has 20 pallets on it, some being back-to-back I might add, then it's not going to matter what size the map is, because at that point you're just going to be playing Pallet Simulator, which funny enough actually seems to be the case for Gideon Meatpacking Plant. And to the no-skill survivor mains that are leaving comments complaining about this change, just look at the map and see that you have 16 vaults to work with, as well as several different walls to play around. Just like how Mandy said killers who camp in tunnel will be in the MMR that they deserve to be in, survivors who rely on pallets to loop instead of having actual game knowledge and skilled usage of the vaults will lose just as much as they deserve to. A good survivor can work with 16 vaults and only 6 pallets on the map, especially when there will be 6 survivors in total. And if God Wolf is watching this right now and currently questioning my decision here, then just know that in Escape the Darkness, the Warehouse map only had around 5 to 6 doors, which functioned as pallets, and it was still the most balanced map in the game. And speaking of Escape the Darkness, this structure right here is based off of one in the Warehouse map. It has 2 stairs on both sides that lead up to 2 connected crates, one of the crates having a vault on the front and the other crate having a vault on the back. It was a pretty fun looping point back in Escape the Darkness, and I wanted to add it here. Of course, I know if Behavior tried something like this, then they'd fuck it up like everything else they touch. Oh wait, they have. Also, the basement will always spawn at Killer's Shack, mostly to make the Trapper mains happy. Oh, hatch won't be a thing. If killers don't get a second chance mechanic, then neither will the survivors, especially when they didn't earn it. Any other questions? That's because I'm saving that part for chapter 13. Oh, and before I forget, each map will have 14 hooks. These are probably not the best locations for them, but I bet you it's better than the system Behavior already has. You have 4 hooks in each corner so survivors will have a better chance at escaping in endgame due to hatch not existing, 1 in the main building, 1 in front of each exit gate, and 1 on the hill. The others are spread out. And of course you have 4 in basement. I could go on and further waste your time about how my maps are infinitely better than any of the maps Behavior has produced, which wouldn't be that hard to do I might add, but for the sake of time, I'll just leave it here, since everything about this map could really be applied to the other maps. Besides, it's not the biggest part of the video that really needs to be focused on, as that role goes to
I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
Now for this section, I'm going to be doing something rather unusual. Instead of going over every single killer power in detail, I'm only going over the killers that I already have, because I don't want to support a corporation that has shown not once, not twice, but 5 separate times that it does not have the interest of me or this player base as its main focus, and only uses this game as a means to generate the wealth that won't cure their incompetence. So that just leaves us with the boys and girls on screen right now. The order we'll be going in is oldest to latest. Funnily enough, very few of them actually need to be reworked, because once you balance the maps, most of the killers will instantly be fine, but certain tweaks here and there are definitely necessary. The Trapper being the best example. The Trapper is the first killer of Dead by Daylight, and it shows. Not just in the fact that his power is one of the worst in the game, but in the fact that behavior has made little to no actual major changes to it to make it stronger since the game was released. Now do you see why I compared behavior to a child earlier? But I have a solution for both the Trapper and the other 25 killers, not just in terms of their viability, but also in regards to tunneling, camping, and slugging. That being the Grim Power. The Grim Power is an ability available to each killer, which when used can give a massive advantage to the killer in the match. Of course, for the pursuit of balance, the strongest Grim Powers will be given to the weakest killers, and the weakest Grim Powers will be given to the strongest killers, making the weaker and more niche killers that you rarely see a lot more viable to the entire player base. And don't worry, it gets better, especially for the survivors. The requirements for the Grim Powers will force the killer to not use underhanded strategies such as tunneling and camping, and also completely patches slugging. The way the Grim Power works is that it has a passive that applies to every single killer, in which after they put a survivor into the dying state, the survivor is pulled into the ground by the entity and sent to the farthest hook from the killer's current position. For example, if the survivor was downed here and the killer's right there, then they'll be spawned on this hook right here. And if the killer were to teleport before the entity fully pulls the survivor into the ground and teleports to this position, then the survivor will spawn on this hook instead. It's a process similar to Escape the Darkness, because you couldn't slug in that game either. This passive completely removes the concept of slugging in the game. So survivor mains, now you can say thank you. And camping is no different, as every killer will get a passive that allows them to gain more blood points if they are at least 30 meters away from a hook survivor when another survivor is not within 15 meters of that hook. So for example, let's say you just downed a survivor and they are sent to the hook farthest from you. For every 5 seconds they are on that hook, you get a 50 blood point bonus for staying at least 30 meters away. But if a survivor were to be within those 15 meters of the hook, then you may go back to it and the bonus won't be affected. But you won't gain anything from it either. It basically rewards you for not camping by the standards of the actual definition, yet it doesn't punish you for the decisions that survivors make. As for tunneling, the requirements will either force the killer to hook every survivor once at least 2 times in order to activate it during the match, or remain as a passive that increases in value the more non-repeated hooks you get. It'll really depend on the killer in question. I almost forgot to mention that the passive that patches slugging also helps mitigate camping. So survivor mains, say thank you one more time. Because they negatively affect the community and the reputation of the game, they're pretty unfun to go against, let's just be honest. And if this game is really going to be balanced and fair, then these playstyles have to go. Crazy, isn't it? A person who loves the game and wants to see it improve makes changes that do just that, helping not just the game, but the community as a whole. Now ask yourself why a 20-year-old college student could come up with this, but a multi-million-dollar corporation who fails to balance this game for a living couldn't come up with this concept 5 years ago. Moving on, let's actually get into the rework I have for Trapper. His power will remain relatively the same. The only tweak I would make is letting him start with all 10 of his bear traps. Oh no, that's it. I meant what I said earlier when it comes to the balance of the killers in this game. Funnily enough, very few of them actually need to be reworked, because once you balance the maps, most of the killers will instantly be fine, but certain tweaks here and there are definitely necessary. As for his Grim Power, I'm going to make it an event ability, similar to the Trickster, where he has to fill 6 bars of a red meter around his power icon. The way he does this is by hooking each survivor at least once. Yes, my 6 survivors comment earlier wasn't a mistake, and there will be 6 survivors in my little revamp of this game. I go more in depth on this in chapter 13, but let's stick to what the title of this chapter is about. After hooking all survivors at least once, he is able to activate his Grim Power, which calls upon the entity to reset all of the bear traps within his terror radius for him.
Holy shit, I'm gonna come.
It seems overpowered, but remember, it only applies to the traps that are within his 32 meter terror radius, and he can only do it twice during the match. Also, as a drawback, if you ever hook the same person twice, instead of getting a fresh hook 6 times, then you'll be locked out of his Grim Power and you won't be able to use it during the match. This doesn't just apply to Trapper, this applies to all the killers. Naturally, tweaking his power and adding the Grim Power requires me to also change the add-ons, you know, just to make it consistent, unlike behavior's balancing. We'll start with a brown brown add-ons and work our way up to the pink add-ons. Trapper gloves will go from 30% to 25%, padded jaws will have its first effect removed, and will only have the second effect, which will be changed to this. Makeshift wrap and bear oil won't be changed because they already work just fine. Rax brick will go from 30% to 20%, because you now have the opportunity to reset the traps in your tear radius twice during the match. Serrated jaws and lengthened jaws will remain the same, and coffee grounds will go from 5% to 3%, because you start out the match with all your traps. 4 coil spring will go from 33% to 25%, because while you will have 6 survivors to deal with, you also have the ability to reset your traps twice during the match. Feels like a fair trade-off to me. The trapper bag is completely changed, now having the effect that it gives you 2 more traps to work with, but you cannot place your bear traps anywhere else. Tar bottle won't change. Secondary coil will go from 50% to 30%. Rusted jaws won't change. The second effect of fastening tools will go from 25% to 30% because there are 6 survivors. Trapper sack gives you 3 more bear traps. Tension spring will be completely reworked, now having the effect that after a survivor escapes a bear trap, their aura will be revealed to you for 3 seconds. Oily coil and honing stone will remain the same. Iridescent stone will be completely changed. Its new effect allows you to mark a certain trap that you've already set. Any survivor caught in it will not be able to escape, and won't be able to be rescued by any other survivor. They're essentially a sitting duck. Most people would be averse to this effect, but I think it's the best alternative to what was already there. Also, bloody coil will remain the same. The Wraith is next up on the list, and when I was talking about balancing killers earlier, he was the exact type of killer I was referring to. That's because I'm not changing him at all. His power is completely fair and balanced. His add-ons are also completely fine too. So the only thing to talk about when it comes to him is his grim power. Since he's B tier for balanced, his grim power won't be that powerful, but still a decent leg up on the survivors. It'll be a passive similar to the anti-slugging part. For every fresh hook he gets on a survivor, it'll grant him a 1% stackable increase in his lunge after he uncloaks, with a total of 12%, which may seem powerful with some perks, but don't worry, I'm reworking them too. Next up is Hillbilly, who I also won't be changing, in both power and add-ons. And people may question this, but don't worry because I'll answer them right now. Question number 1, wouldn't he be too overpowered due to how you changed the map? And question number 2, if you're not changing anything about him, then would you consider him to be actually fair and balanced? For question number 1, no, he would not be too overpowered on this map. Yeah, he won't have to deal with the random shit in the way, but he can still be looped by good survivors, and decent survivors who are boosted by perks. Also, you would still have to deal with the learning curve that comes with playing him, as well as his skill ceiling, which is exactly why I consider him to be one of the more balanced killers besides Wraith. Hillbilly's grim power will be another passive, mostly because he's A tier as a killer. The way it works is that every time he gets a fresh hook, he fills a blood meter around his power icon, and after getting 1 hook on all 6 survivors, his passive activates, making it so that his chainsaw reloads 20% faster after hitting a survivor, with every non-repeated hook after that granting a 5% stackable increase. Notice that I said non-repeated. Moving on, we have the nurse, and oh boy, this will take a while. First of all, I'm gonna completely rework her power from the ground up. Then I'll go over her grim power, and finally her add-ons. The nurse's power allows her to go through walls, effectively denying the core mechanics of the game, and eliminating almost every single counterplay survivors have. You may see why this is a problem if your IQ is higher than behaviors. So her new power will be something else entirely. Spencer's last breath will allow the nurse to blink through certain objects within a very, very short range, letting her catch up to survivors, only sealing their fate when they discover the horrors that lie behind the corpses left around the map. Her first special ability is the blink, which allows her to blink through certain objects. Her blink range is as far as 8 meters and only holds 2 charges. Her reload time on the blinks will remain the same. First thing to note about this ability is that she can't blink through survivors, so body blocking will be a pretty effective counterplay. Her special locomotion is the dead patients. The way it works is that 19 patient corpses will spawn in the match, and the nurse can use these corpses to teleport across the map, the teleport itself having a cooldown of 20 seconds. She can enter one of these corpses and move freely through each one of them, and then choose to exit the one she's currently inhabiting. Doing this will make the corpse turn to dust and it will no longer be usable. The idea here is to make her still relatively the most powerful killer in the game, while still making her fair to play against. Her biggest weakness being the fact that corpses don't respawn, so she has to use them wisely on top of managing her blinks, as well as handling a total of 6 survivors. Doesn't seem that overpowered now, now, does it? And if this power sounds relatively familiar, then you've either clicked off this video to watch some Escape the Darkness gameplay, or you've played the game yourself before it shut down. Because this power is practically one-to-one to the Scarecrow, who has damn near the same type of power as my nurse rework. This is on purpose though, as Scarecrow was the most powerful killer in that game, yet was still pretty balanced. Moving on, we have the nurse's Grim Power, which will operate as an event ability, similar to the Trapper. After you get 6 fresh hooks, you gain a token. Activating the Grim Power consumes 1 token, allowing you to see the auras of all survivors for 6 or 7 seconds. I know what you're thinking, don't do it. The nurse can obviously do this twice during the match, at any time she wants to, and considering it only gives you aura reading, then it won't be too powerful, but it will still be pretty clutch in the right circumstances. As for her add-ons, I'm gonna rework a good chunk of them to make it consistent with her new locomotion. Wooden Horse will go from 50% to 40%, and Metal Spoon will go from 60 seconds to 40 seconds. White Knit Comb will have a completely different effect, allowing the nurse to render her heartbeat completely silent, and upon teleporting within 8 meters of a survivor, you'll gain 100 blood points for scaring them. Plate Flannel, Pocket Watch, and Dark Cincher will remain the same. Catatonic Boy's Treasure will go from 65% to 55%, Batman Keepsake will go from 60 seconds to 30 seconds, and Dull Bracelet will have a new effect. It increases the reload time for your locomotion by 5 seconds, yet turns your 8 meter blink range into a 12 meter blink range. Spasmodic Breath, Heavy Panting, and Anxious Grasp will all remain the same. Ataxic Respiration will go from 7% to 14%. Fragile Wheeze will have a new effect, sparing one of the corpses the nurse teleports to from being turned to dust. You'll have a prompt asking you whether or not you want to spare the specific corpse you teleported to, letting you choose which corpse you want to save for later. And no, I don't mean it like that. Kavanaugh's Last Breath and Batman's Last Breath will remain the same. Jenner's Last Breath will have the last effect removed completely, and instead the replacement will allow her reload time to be decreased by 50%. Campbell's Last Breath will show you the aura of survivors within 20 meters of a corpse after you teleport to one yourself. Torn Bookmark's second effect will be increased from 30% to 40%. Matchbox will have a completely new effect, adding 2 more corpses to the map that are reusable. And now that we've gone over the killer that Behavior should have nerfed instead of the pig, let's move on to the next killer. The same guy who Behavior got right the first time, much to the surprise of me, yet somehow thought he needed to get quote unquote fixed, and not the maps that were actually the issue. The first thing I'm going to be doing is reverting everything about his kit to the way it was before. That includes the add-ons too, by the way, because it was thematically perfect for the character, and didn't need to be changed at all. As I said many times earlier, he wasn't the problem, everything else around him was. The second thing I'm going to be changing is slightly tweaking how his power works. Instead of only being able to tier 3 around 7 times a match, he'll be able to do it infinitely. Also, change the amount of time tier 3 actually lasts for. So instead of lasting for a full minute, it'll only last for 30 seconds. Next up is his Grim Power, which will be a passive similar to Wraith. The more non-repeated hooks he gets on the 6 survivors, the longer his tier 3 lasts for. Each fresh hook gives him an extra 5 seconds. Now this may seem a little too overpowered, and definitely unnecessary when you look at one of his old pink add-ons, but let me respond to both of those points right now. Myers will still be an M1 killer with no anti-loop, meaning that the most he can rely on is the perks and the skill of the player. Number 2, Flagrant Tuft of Hair will have an entirely new effect, as I don't believe killer add-ons should give you the exposed status effect, at least not a good chunk of them. It sets a bad precedent that Oddstarva pointed out in this thumbnail. Now let's get into the add-ons. This time will be different though, because we'll be starting with the pink add-ons and working our way down. Both Flagrant Tuft of Hair and Judith's Tombstone will have entirely different effects. Flagrant Tuft of Hair will now let you kill your obsession by your hand if they have already reached the second hook stage. You must be in tier 3 to do this, by the way, and your movement speed is reduced by 9% while in tier 3. It also increases the threshold to reach tier 3 by 300%, since it's a free Mori after all. Judith's Tombstone will now decrease the stun duration for a pallet stun by 10%. It also lets you pierce through a survivor's third health state, so if they were to use Dead Hard or any other exhaustion perk to give themselves the endurance status effect, and you hit them while in tier 3, they'll still go down regardless. Also, it increases the threshold to reach tier 3 by 300%. Now you could say this is too overpowered, but remember he's still an M1 killer, and since my voice box is starting to give out on me, I'm just going to list the changes I made to the rest of his add-ons on screen right now.
That's so weak and uninspired, like.
No, yeah.
The hag will also follow Wraith and Hillbilly in the sense that I'm not changing her at all, considering she is practically fine in every single aspect, and Behavior thought this too as they haven't really touched her since she released.
But as I played the hag, something dawned on me. She came out in late 2016. It is now 2022, and in that whole time, the developers have never touched her. Trapper, Wraith, Hillbilly, and Huntress had their add-ons remixed, while the Doctor and Nurse received full reworks. Hag was minimally updated in October of 2018, then never again.
So the only thing we'll be covering is her Grim Power, which will act as an event ability. After getting 6 fresh hooks on 6 survivors, the hag will be able to activate her Grim Power, which gives her 15% haste for 15 seconds. During this time, you can teleport to 2 traps, but only 2 of them. So it's kind of like the reverse of Hag's weakness. Now she'll do better in chase, but you have to determine which trap is best to use. Oh, and before I forget, during this time you can only teleport to traps within the 48 meters. So Mint Rag or any other range add-on won't make this Grim Power busted. Of course, similar to Trapper and Nurse, you can activate this Grim Power twice during the match, and whenever you want after you meet the requirement. Next up is Doctor, who I also won't be changing, in both power and add-ons, because remember, funnily enough, very few of them actually need to be reworked, because once you balance the maps, most of the killers will instantly be fine, but certain tweaks here and there are definitely necessary. So let's go over his Grim Power, which will give him a projectile that he can shoot after getting 6 fresh hooks. It's a passive and will trigger automatically once he gets the 6th hook. The projectile is a crack of lightning, similar to Thor's Awakened State lightning in Marvel Rivals. The range itself is 12 meters, which is less than Deathslinger's range by the way. It has infinite ammo considering the lightning literally comes right out of him, but it'll only last for 30 seconds. Although if you get any non-repeated hooks after this power was activated, then it adds 10 seconds to the timer. So that 30 seconds is now 90 seconds if you're demolishing survivors. Of course, if you're not demolishing the survivors and are unable to get a non-repeated hook in time, then the power will just deplete. But the next time you do get a non-repeated hook, you'll get 15 seconds worth of the projectile, and any non-repeated hook you get while within the duration will add 5 seconds to the timer. So his Grim Power is only available after you get 6 fresh hooks and removes the Doctor's main weakness to a certain extent. And even after it's gone, you can still get it, it's just not as good as the first time. Maybe that's why the women in my life always leave me. Anyways, Huntress is next, and the only thing I'm changing about her power is how many hatchets she'll have. Instead of starting the match with 7 hatchets, she'll start the match with 3. And don't worry, I'm about to explain why. Her Grim Power will operate as a passive. On your second hook that's not repeated, you'll instantly reload your hatchets by 1. This reload number will increase to 2 on your 4th non-repeated hook, and it will basically increase by 2 until hitting the maximum limit of 6 hatchets on your 12th non-repeated hook. Basically, hooking the first survivor activates the passive, getting your second hook reloads your hatchets automatically by 1, and the more non-repeated hooks you get will increase the number by 1. I mean, it was either that or you get infinite ammo for 30 seconds. But unlike Behavior, I know how to actually get creative when designing killer powers. Now, of course, I know a streamer or YouTuber watching this has already paused the video to explain why this will be a bad addition, using only one add-on as an example, so let me dispel these critiques right now. Iridescent Head will only work once, and the second effect will be removed. Simple and easy. Now that we solved that minor problem, let's get into the killer that Behavior reworked 3 times, or as I like to call him, the most balanced killer in Dead by Daylight. And now that I think about it, isn't it weird that Behavior could rework Freddy 3 times, rework Myers, but couldn't rework Nurse despite 4/5 of the community begging for it? Within the 9 years this game has been out, unfortunately, I'm going to have to tweak his power a bit since he does have anti-loop, and readjust his add-ons as well. So let's start with his power. Freddy's passive, Micro Sleep, will be visible to both him and the survivors. Alarm clocks will no longer grant invincibility from the dream world, and cannot be used to exit said dream world. All asleep survivors suffer a 3% penalty in healing, repairing, and cleansing when in the dream world. The dream world will also have a reddish hue, with the moon itself bleeding. This is purely aesthetic, by the way. There's no competitive advantage here. Dream projection and his dream palettes, as well as the add-ons associated with them, will remain the same, but dream snares will be replaced with something entirely different. Now, Freddy can activate Dream Phantom, which when looking at a survivor, allows him to pull them into a nightmare state for 4.5 seconds, similar to how he had to pull survivors into the dream world in the first run of his power. But unlike that weak shit, this will actually mean something, as after pulling the survivor for 4.5 seconds, they will now be enveloped in the nightmare state, causing visual hallucinations of Freddy lunging at them periodically, limiting their vision to 20 meters, and they constantly hear your terror radius. This nightmare state lasts for 35 seconds, and the only way to get out out is to use the alarm clocks, which will be highlighted in white to the survivors when in the nightmare state. Also, you can 99 this ability. Of course, you can only use this ability on survivors that are already asleep. And before someone in the comments says it, yes, I stole another idea from Escape the Darkness. I don't have any shame in it though, because if it's already been shown to work and be balanced, then why wouldn't you want to implement that here? Also, let's not act like EDD hasn't stolen anything from Dead by Daylight either. Next up is his Grim Power, which acts as an event ability that automatically puts all survivors except the Obsession into the dream world after you get 6 fresh hooks, so you don't get the luxury of activating it like the Doctor. Of course, since your Obsession isn't put into the dream world, they'll instead be placed into the nightmare state. Now it's time for the add-ons that involve dream snares, as they now need to be changed to work with dream phantoms. Garden Rake will further limit the survivor's vision to 15 meters instead of 20. Prototype Claws will decrease the charge time it takes to pull survivors into the nightmare state by 2 seconds. Outdoor Rope increases the rate at which the phantoms appear by 15%. Nancy's Sketch increases the duration of the nightmare state by 5 seconds. Replace dream snares with dream phantoms in Nancy's Masterpiece. Jump Rope now makes the survivor 10% hindered when they are in the nightmare state. Blue Dress will now reveal survivors that are in the nightmare state to you, and Z-Block will only apply to dream pallets, and the 3 seconds is now 6 seconds. Now it's Pig's turn, and don't worry Dress and Bubba, I won't pull a behavior and nerf her for no reason. In fact, I'm doing quite the opposite. Jigsaw's Baptism will now give you 6 inactive bear traps instead of 4, although there will only be 5 Jigsaw boxes, so you're guaranteed a head pop, with each Jigsaw box guaranteeing a key to your reverse bear trap so it's not RNG based. You also get to see these boxes highlighted in white, whereas the survivors can't. The Pig's Grim Power will also be a passive. The second non-repeated hook blocks the farthest Jigsaw box from you, and that sequence keeps repeating until the 6th non-repeated hook, which will block all objectives for 10 seconds. After this, your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th non-repeated hooks will still block the farthest Jigsaw box from you based on your current position, but the 12th hook will block all objectives, this time for 15 seconds instead of just 10. The Pig's add-ons will be slightly adjusted, specifically 2 of them. Workshop Grease will be 25% instead of 50%, and Videotape will not affect the Obsession, so only 5 survivors will have traps on them. And just to avoid confusion, rule set number 2 is the only way the survivors will be able to see the locations of Jigsaw boxes. Now let's get to the Clown, who will have slight adjustments to his power. The Afterpiece tonic will no longer hinder the survivors, and instead only impair their vision. The more you use this bottle, the more it'll impair them. As for the Afterpiece antidote, it'll only apply to the killer, and its effect will remain the same. His Grim Power will be an event ability. You have to get 6 non-repeated hooks on all survivors, and in return, your entire terror radius is covered in the Afterpiece tonic. Maybe not literally, but you get what I mean. This time though, it will apply 15% hindered to the survivors, yet only slightly impair their vision. You can use this twice during the match, and whenever you want after you get the 6 hooks required to use it. As for the add-ons, Kerosene Can only inflicts blindness for 10 seconds, Sulfuric Acid Vial will only last for 35 seconds, Flask of Bleach will cause exhausted for 15 seconds, Cigar Box will only apply to the Clown, and Pinky Finger will only down a survivor once. Spirit is next, but unlike Nurse, I'm not going to be changing her power, since it's actually fair and balanced. So we'll just be going into her Grim Power, which will act as a passive. For each non-repeated hook you get, Footsteps, Panting, and Grunts of Pain will be 4% louder, maxing out at 48%. Normies would say, oh, this is useless, until you look up the Spirit's main weakness. Her add-ons are pretty fine considering you're going against 6 survivors and everything that comes with it, so let's just go to Legion, who also won't have his power changed. His Grim Power will be another event ability. Each time Legion gets a non-repeated hook, gain a token up to a maximum of 3. Activating this event ability consumes all tokens, and you'll gain 20% haste for 25 seconds, which will end automatically if you hit a survivor. Of course, this means that you'll be able to activate this 4 times during the match instead of 2, but I think this is more than fair to both sides considering Legion's main weakness.
Legion's main strength is a basic one, but their ability to injure a whole team extremely efficiently, and how they can also locate survivors with this, is probably their biggest strength. Their weakness is the subsequent lack of ability to act on this, essentially being reduced to an M1 killer, using their power to further slow, or for occasional loot plays. Their insta-down barely ever comes into play, and their power can be countered with survivors spreading out.
The only add-on I'll be adjusting is Smiley Face Pin, which will be 30 seconds. Moving on, we have Plague, who also doesn't need to be changed in both power and add-ons, so all we have to cover is her Grim Power, which will act as an event ability, allowing Plague to block all the pools in the map from survivors for 25 seconds. This can be used twice during the match, and whenever you want after meeting the requirement. Next up is Ghostface, who actually will have his power reworked. What I'm taking away is his stalk and the feature of survivors revealing you. You can still crouch though, and go undetectable. Also, your Night Shroud gives you 2% haste. Night Shroud only deactivates after you injure a survivor or you get stunned. And when you get stunned at a Night Shroud, the survivor who stunned you will be revealed by Killer Instinct. Now, if you were paying attention earlier, you would know that I didn't say that I was taking away Ghostface's insta-down. And that's because I'm not. I'm simply repackaging it. Now you must injure different survivors 6 times for you to be able to activate this ability, which when used, can insta-down the next survivor you hit within 10 seconds. Ghostface's Grim Power will be a passive, a fun one at that, as when you get all 12 non-repeated hooks, you now have the ability to randomly reveal one of the 6 survivors as the second Ghostface. With cosmetics identical to yours, this second killer will have no perks, they won't be able to use Night Shroud, so their terror radius and red stain are always visible, and if there are any survivor bots in the lobby, then the real player that's playing survivor will be the second Ghostface. And if all of the survivors are bots, then it will just be random. The system will prioritize real players is what I'm trying to say. I think this will be a pretty cool power. I mean, it's better than what Behavior came up with. Anyways, let me just do what I did earlier to Myers and have the changes I made to the add-ons be on screen, since my voice box is giving out on me again. Demogorgon will only change in the sense that his strike cannot be used to down survivors, and will only apply deep wound if they are already injured. You can still use them to break pallets though. Demo's add-ons are pretty fine, except for Brass Case Lighter, which will be 30 seconds instead of 60 seconds. Now let's get into his Grim Power. It'll be a passive ability, where after you get 3 non-repeated hooks, all of your portals become blocked, and cannot be sealed for 15 seconds. Pretty basic, but useful in a lot more scenarios than you think, especially since you get to activate it 6 times during the match. Oni is next, and his power is pretty fine. I'm not changing it since it's not really that impressive, especially when you'll have 6 survivors to deal with. His add-ons are pretty fine too, so let's just move on to his Grim Power, which will also be a passive ability. After getting 6 non-repeated hooks, your obsession will not only be revealed to you for 20 seconds, but will also be cursed for that same duration. This curse applies a 5% speed penalty in cleansing, healing, and repairing, only deactivating after the duration or they're hooked. Deathslinger's power will also not be changed, neither will his add-ons. And just to save myself some time here in advance, this is a list of the killers who also won't have their powers or add-ons changed. Deathslinger's Grim Power will be an event ability, allowing him to block all totems, hex, or dole for 30 seconds after getting 6 non-repeated hooks. And if you were to snuff out a boon totem during this time, that dole totem now becomes blocked for the remainder of the duration. Blight's Grim Power will also be an event ability, allowing Blight to cause exhaustion to all survivors after getting 6 non-repeated hooks for 60 seconds. This only ends after you perform an M1 attack on a survivor. Note that it doesn't end the duration for all of the survivors, just the one you used a basic attack on. Again, it's not too powerful like Nurse and Spirit, but still pretty good if you're actually good at the game, which should be the case since you're playing one of the hardest killers to play. The Grim Power for the twins will be both a passive and event ability that causes 5% hinder for the obsession for 20 seconds after you get a non-repeated hook. Once you reach all 6 non-repeated hooks on all 6 survivors, you then get to activate your event ability, which blocks the hook of the farthest survivor from you from other survivors for 15 seconds. During this duration, the hook timer is paused, and if they're at the second stage, then the skill checks won't pop up. Note that you can use this event ability twice during the match, and whenever you want after you get those 6 non-repeated hooks. People will say this is broken, but I'm just going to level set you and reveal that there are only 3 situations this will be borderline unfair in. Trickster will definitely be getting some changes, specifically to his power. He now gains 4% haste when throwing knives, and he can activate main event whenever he wants. After that, you have now turned a D tier killer into a B tier killer. As for his Grim Power, it'll act as another event ability, where after he gets 3 non-repeated hooks, he can inflict full laceration on all survivors within his terror radius. What I mean by full laceration is that it automatically fills the laceration meter for all survivors in his terror radius, making them pretty vulnerable if you can hit a shot, unless your behavior and the target is making this game be in a good state. He can use this ability 4 times during the match, and whenever he wants, similar to main event, which for some reason behavior still hasn't wasn't done, despite it being such a simple change that would greatly benefit the killer. Now let's move on to the hottest killer in the game, and no, I'm not being ironic, we have the artist. Her grim power will operate as a passive, where she now gets a new ability aside from her usual Birds of Torment. You get this by hooking the first survivor, but cannot use it until you get a hook on a completely different survivor. After that, you can now summon a spiral of crows, which visually will look like a hurricane that will curve either to the left or the right. It'll last for 4 seconds, but will have a cooldown of 6 seconds. Your 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th hook will increase the number of charges you get by 1, maxing out at 6 charges total, with a total cooldown period of 20 seconds if all charges were used. Anything for the 3rd hottest video game character of all time. Next up, we have the Dredge, and the only thing I'm going to be taking from him is his anti-loop. His teleport and nightfall are staying exactly the way it is. His grim power will act as a passive, activating after he hooks a survivor, which lets him use an M2 ability that drains the survivors of their life force energy. Bear with me here. You have a homing attack that must be on the target to deal damage that lasts for 45 seconds. You can injure healthy survivors and apply deep wound to injured survivors. This ability will end after your 45 seconds are up, but can be accessed again when hooking a different survivor. Of course, if you were to hook a different survivor before the duration runs out, then the timer will just reset. I'll have some footage of Cloak and Dagger from Marvel Rivals on screen right now to properly visualize what I'm saying. As for Skull Merchant, just take her out of the game. Simple as that. Springtrap is the last killer on this list, and definitely the most disappointing for me personally. I don't know, I guess I just expected more from the most hyped killer in DBD. And no, I'm not taking that back because it's true. Instead, we just got a better Huntress with teleport similar to the Dredge. And before you say Scott Cawthon had a big role in deciding what Springtrap's power would be, first off, that doesn't successfully demean the level of disappointment I had, and 2, let's not act like Scott Cawthon hasn't slipped up before when it comes to this franchise. So, it's time to fix the failure that is Springtrap within Dead by Daylight, and make him not only good, but thematically perfect in his new design. Similar to what Behavior had with Michael Myers before they ruined it. Springtrap's killer power will now include 2 special abilities and a slight rework to his map feature's security system. These 2 special abilities will be Chad's compared to the beta Fire Axe ability, as the first now lets you charge up a jump scare that will apply 10% hinder for 10 seconds to survivors, and apply deep wound to injured survivors. After successfully landing a jump scare, there won't be a cooldown, allowing the ability to instantly reset. But there's a catch. Missing a jump scare will put the ability on cooldown for 14 seconds. I say miss because it'll be a closer range attack, the range itself being 5 meters. So your first special ability allows you to make a short ranged attack that upon completing, you get 10% hindered on a healthy survivor that will last for 6 seconds, apply deep wound to an injured survivor, and the opportunity to chain it. Now what does the second ability do? Well, I'm glad you didn't ask. The second special ability allows you to summon the Phantom animatronics, 3 of them to be exact: Mangle, Balloon Boy, and the Puppet. I'm not including the other 3 for a reason I'll explain later, so just put a pin in that. The special ability comes with 3 charges, each charge having a cooldown of 5 seconds, 15 seconds total if you used all 3. These Phantom animatronics will act in a similar fashion to both the Artist Birds and the Knight's Guards, where you can alternate between the 3 Phantoms to choose which one you want to use, and then set them on the survivor. Each Phantom causes a different effect. Mangle will haunt the survivor for 30 seconds, inflicting a 10% penalty in healing. Puppet will have the same duration and percentage, but this time it's a 10% speed penalty when cleansing or blessing totems, and Balloon Boy will follow suit in both the duration and the percentage, but will have a 10% speed penalty and repair speed for both generators and blood tanks, making the survivors in this game understand exactly why real FNAF fans and OGs like myself hate Balloon Boy. Of course, survivors can counter this by going to the 4 music boxes around the map that'll play a lullaby. Within the 10-meter range of this music box, you can try to snap out of it, similar to the Doctor, and make the phantoms disappear. Survivors can't see this music box, but the killer can. Speaking of which, I mentioned earlier that the map feature, the security system, will be getting a slight rework. The slight rework in question being the fact that survivors can no longer use it themselves, and only the killer can use it. But it won't give the killer wall hacks, lol. Instead, it will force Springtrap to stop moving, making him undetectable for as long as he's looking at those cameras. Kind of like how the animatronics never move while you're looking at them through the cameras in the actual games, giving him a pretty good form of awareness. Oh, and before I forget, completely remove the doors because Springtrap will not and should not be able to teleport. Now let's move on to his grim power. And by golly, everyone who is a fan of FNAF and others who were disappointed by Springtrap's actual power are gonna love this. Springtrap's grim power will act as a passive, spawning 5 empty animatronic suits around the map, all of them being Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and a character similar in design to Twisted Wolf. Also, you remember that pin I gave you earlier? Yeah, give it back to me because this is exactly why I didn't have the other 3 Phantom animatronics as options. Now let me give you another pin because there's a reason I didn't use Golden Freddy for the 5th animatronic, a reason that I'll mention later. The Grim power will only activate after you've gotten 12 non-repeated hooks, and what it will do is after you kill a survivor, either by your hand or on the hook, they'll be sent to a black screen instead of the traditional game over screen they get, and during this black screen segment, they'll randomly be met with this. Afterwards, you'll be transported into one of the 5 empty suits and will act as a second killer. Now you have to kill the very survivors you tried to help earlier, helping the man responsible for your murder. I told you FNAF fans and OGs like me were going to like this. Also, give me that pin back because this is exactly why I didn't use Golden Freddy earlier. Naturally, only 5 survivors will be able to possess these suits after they die, which leaves the last survivor alone. As for what you can do in these suits as a survivor possessing it, you're undetectable but loud as fuck when moving. You'll be able to injure survivors and only apply deep wound to already injured survivors. Also, when you attack a survivor, it creates a notification for Springtrap. Note that while this may sound overpowered, you have to 12 hook, kill one survivor, and then another, and another until you eventually win. Basically, you're putting in a lot of effort for a high reward, and actually getting rewarded for doing so. Now, if only Behavior took that model of game design and applied it to the game, playing Killer would certainly be less stressful. Now, you may be expecting me to go over Springtrap's add-ons and completely rework them to be consistent with his new power, but to that, I have a confession to make. I don't think killers or survivors should have add-ons in Dead by Daylight. My first reason is because after a certain point, it gets hard to balance. You'll have effects that are useless, meme-worthy, fair, good, great, and borderline overpowered. Oh, and don't forget downright cancerous. Yeah, I get the whole point that they're meant to be fun and all since this is a party game, but also remember the fact that Behavior wanted to make this game competitive, and if you want to achieve that, then you need to focus on balance instead of fun, and a story. My second reason is because in Escape the Darkness, yes, I'm not going to stop mentioning that game, you didn't have add-ons. The killer power and perks were more than enough, because in that game, the killers actually had good game design, where they didn't need anti-loop to catch up to survivors because the devs refused to balance the maps. They could activate their best abilities on command and were overall pretty fun to play as. You didn't need the add-ons to make the killer more enjoyable. You just needed to know your stuff and actually care about what you're making. And if you're one of those survivor mates who still think that even after all my changes, these killers are still unbalanced, then I have just the chapter for you. Sorry for the lack of background in this segment. I'm currently in the void right now because that's how I feel emotionally whenever I talk about this topic. And since I don't know where to start, I might as well lead with this. If there's one thing in this game that refuses to change, it's the survivor's ability to say that the new killer is overpowered and needs to be nerfed. Meanwhile, this is them in a 4-man swift on comms. Now I know that I might seem like I'm rage baiting or just trying to be edgy and different, but I can assure you, I mean every single thing I'm about to say here. I've hit Red Rank 1 twice, I've only played Killer, and have over 300 hours into this game. And without even needing to play Survivor, I can tell you right now that this game is absolutely Survivor-sided. You see this with not only the amount of second chances and crutch perks survivors currently have and used to have, but also with the actual game design itself. Every map in this game is so unbalanced in the survivor's favor that Behavior needed to add a base kit mechanic called Bloodlust just so that the killer can actually catch up to the survivor. And before they did that, they made the most unfair killer in the game to accomplish the same goal. And then after both of those failed attempts, they added this thing called anti-loop to certain killers, which can go from decent to absolutely fucking useless. Mind you, this anti-loop change absolutely destroyed killers that didn't have it, with Myers being the biggest example. Of course I could go further, but let's move on to something else. Like how survivors can not only choose where their boon totems are, but can also bring them back as many times as they want. And let me tell you something right now. Every survivor can run this and make it so much more oppressive than it actually is. And they don't even have to be good just to do that, by the way. And of course, last but not least, we have the hatch, a literal second chance mechanic that allows survivors to win even though they didn't earn it or deserve it for that matter. I don't care. The fact that it's even there is a problem in itself. It's a clear reflection of poor game design, and I will not stand for it. And you want to know how I know the hatch is a reflection of poor game design? Because once upon a time, the survivors could literally just DC for hatch, an actual exploit that was abused until Behavior made it so that it would only spawn when there was only one survivor left. Also, read this Reddit reply of someone telling me why hatch exists. Now, of course, I'm not going to take this Reddit's comments word as gospel, but for the sake of argument, let's do just that. If the purpose of hatch was to negate how bad playing playing solo queue survivor feels sometimes, then wouldn't it be more efficient to just tell the survivors to get good at the game so they wouldn't need something that's the equivalent to no ed? Like seriously, why are we balancing this game around skill issues? The survivors are so bad at this game, they need an actual pity door to make up for their shitty teammates. So how about this? To all the survivors in this game, get better. Get better so that you don't need to rely on third health state perks like Dead Hard to extend your chase. Get better so that your teammates won't need to rely on a hatch to actually escape. And get better so that I don't have to balance these killers around your lack of skill. Like seriously, survivors will complain that the killer has no ed, but will completely ignore how they get a literal freebie escape just for losing, which the killer can't prevent by the way. And then you used to have those absolute goofball survivors who would teabag at the exit gates even though they got carried by a fucking map offering. Sorry, I kinda lost my cool there for a second. Alright, rant over. Let's move on.
Honesty is a one-way gate to hell. I wanna taste consumption, breathe faster to waste oxygen. Hear the children sing aloud. It's music till the wick burns out.
As of me writing this video, there are at least 140 killer perks in Dead by Daylight, and I will be reworking and or tweaking all of them in this video. I'll also be doing the same thing to the survivors later on. Now do you see why this video is so long? But let's not dwell on the length of this video, and instead on the perks that I'm going to be reworking, starting with the general killer perks. Bitter Murmur, otherwise known as the let's see how many survivors were penetrating a single generator perk, is a perk that I'm not changing whatsoever, as its effect is perfectly consistent with the changes I not only made earlier, but also the changes I'll be making later. Can't say the same thing for Deerstalker though, which will have a different effect. Successfully injuring a survivor will allow you to see their aura for 9 seconds. The perk itself will have a cooldown of 25 seconds. The idea here is to give it the same feeling that old Deerstalker had, but since you can't actually slug the survivors anymore, you might as well see what they're doing after you shoved your foot up their ass. The main and probably only drawback is that this effect only works if you M1 the survivor, so special attacks or anything other than a simple M1 won't trigger the effect. Also, the effect won't apply if the survivor had a third health state. Hex Fortune's Fool is one of the many killer hex perks in the game, and pay attention right now because I'm about to list a change that's going to apply to all of them. The killer will get to choose where the hex totem spawns. Yeah, real groundbreaking, I know. It's a change you'd think behavior would have implemented already, but then you realize just exactly who you're talking about, and just like that your expectations are sent to negative infinity. I wish I had those levels of expectations when the FNAF chapter came out. The way it'll work is that none of the hex totem perks will be active until a killer picks a dull totem to place the hex on. Think of the process like Trapper setting his traps early on in the match. This is not the best change in this video, and will probably be the worst change if you really put it into practice, but I thought it was an idea worth trying out, especially since it'll actually make killer feel like the power roll. As for the effect of Fortune's Fool, I'm not changing it. The same thing does not apply to Noed though, which will be gutted. Noed now has the major counter, which is the fact that if you set the hex on a dull totem, and the survivors cleanse that specific totem, it will not activate at all. So this part of the effect means nothing. The range of the hex will also not be 32 meters the entire time. Instead, it'll just be 4 meters at the start of the match, and gradually become 32 meters. Thrill of the Hunt will be increased from 12% to 18% because you're going against 6 survivors. No Holds Barred is going from 25 seconds to 15 seconds, and will only apply to the blood tanks, so it won't affect the generators. Scourge Hook Monster Shrine is going from 20% to 30%, and the range will be increased from 24 meters to 32 meters. Shattered Hope will not destroy the dull totem, and instead the boon is just snuffed out like normal. Distressing, Insidious, Iron Grasp, Scourge Hook Weeping Wounds, Sloppy Butcher, Spies from the Shadows, Unrelenting, and Whispers will all remain the same. Alright, now let's move on to the perks of the actual killers. Agitation, Brutal Strength, and Unnerving Presence will all receive a different change. Agitation will go from 12 meters to just 8.4, as to not be too powerful when combined with Distressing. A 5% reduction will happen to Brutal Strength, and Unnerving Presence first effect will go from 10% to 15%. It really should be 20%, but I don't want to take things too far and accidentally make a perk that can be abused, something that behavior clearly doesn't consider when making survivor perks. Shadowborn is getting a buff, specifically a 5-second increase for how long the haste lasts, now being 15 seconds total. Of course, this is the only perk that's getting changed, as both Predator and Bloodhound will remain the same. Lightborn is a cancer to the mental health of Flashlight Bully squads, the same way behavior's existence is a cancer to my mental health, which is exactly why it's going to stay the way it is. It's unfortunate unfortunate that one of the 4 things I mentioned will continue to exist on this planet without my consent, but I'll manage. Enduring will be hard nerfed, going from 50% to 25%, as you'll only have 6 pallets to deal with. Tinkerer will only change in the sense that instead of applying to generators, it'll apply to the blood tanks. Nurse's Calling, Strider, and Thanatophobia will all remain unchanged. Dying Light's first effect will go from 33% to 15%, while the second effect will remain unchanged. Play with your food will remain the same, and Save the Best for Last will be changed. Taking more inspiration from Escape the Darkness, the perk itself will operate as a passive, exactly like Relentless, in which every time you hit a survivor with a basic M1 attack, your successful hit cooldown is reduced by 40%. That's it, that's the effect. It may seem too powerful, but just remember that in the context where it's claimed to be too powerful, more often than not, it's only too powerful because of the idiotic decisions that players make. And don't forget you have to deal with 6 of these idiots. All 3 of these perks still have the same effect I added earlier if you were paying attention. Ruin will have its entire effect change, now only applying to the Sacrificial Circle objective I later mentioned in chapter 13. What it does is that when the survivors collect all but one of the survivor skulls and place them into the circle, that last skull gets blocked by the entity for 20 seconds, giving the killer enough time to catch up. The third seal is only changed in the sense that it now affects any survivor you hit, but this time, it must be with a basic M1 attack and won't apply if you use a special attack. Also, Devour Hope stays the same. Overcharge will remain unchanged for the majority of its effect, except for the last part, as it'll go from 130% to just 100%. Monitor and Abuse, as well as Overwhelming Presence will remain the same. Huntress Lullaby and Territorial Imperative will also remain unchanged. Beast of Prey is the only perk of the Huntress that needs to be changed here, mostly because it has ties to a mechanic that I forgot to mention I'm removing earlier. Since the maps will be balanced, there won't be a need for the killers to have Bloodlust, so Beast of Prey's new effect will grant the killer undetectable for 20 seconds after being in chase with the survivor for 5 seconds, after which it will go on a cooldown of 15 seconds. Of course, the perk deactivates once you hit a survivor, either with a basic attack or a special attack, a simple and harmless perk that can do some damage if applied correctly. Franklin's Demise is a perk that has been changed multiple times, so I'm just gonna give it the effect that it should have always had. Your basic attacks make survivors drop their item on impact. After 50 seconds of not being picked up, the item will be consumed by the entity. I think this effect will be better since it's still pretty gimmicky, yet can be used in a competitive sense and not screw you over. Barbecue and Chili will also have to be changed, as its effect might be pretty inconsistent with the change I made with the Grim Power. Will now reveal all of the survivors within your terror radius after the entity consumes a survivor and places them on a hook. Also, Knockout's not getting changed. Blood Warden's a pretty funny and satisfying perk when it works, so it won't be changed too much. And instead what will be changed is how long endgame is. It'll now be 2 minutes instead of 4, because let's be honest, if there are 6 of you and a good majority couldn't escape within a minute after the exit gates were already opened, you deserve that Blood Warden loss. Fire Up will also be changed due to the changes I make in chapter 13, so its new effect is that you gain a stackable 5% increase in breaking pallets, walls, generators, and vaulting for each objective completed, which caps at 20% for all 4 tokens. Also, Remember Me's 30% will just be 20%. Make Your Choice will remain unchanged. Hangman Trick's last effect will be patched because of the Grim Power change, and when the entity consumes a survivor, it'll always pick a Scourge Hook first. The change I'm making to Surveillance is allowing you to see the actual progression meter of the blood tanks and generators from at least 8 meters away. Pop Goes the Weasel is one of the better generator perks for killers, which is why I'll be making slight tweaks to it. The first is making that 45-second window a 50-second window, since the extra 5 seconds can always help. You thought I'd nerf the perk, right? Well, joke's on you. I'm not Behavior Makes Stupid Decisions. Bamboozle will only get a change to the vault speed, making it 10% instead of 15%, and Chorophobia will go from 50% to 30%, for both 50s by the way. Spirit Fury is an interesting case, since I wouldn't really need to nerf it as you'll only be able to break 2 pallets in the entire match if the survivors aren't running perks. And even if the killer were to run the Spirit Fury and Enduring combo, first of all, it wouldn't be that powerful, and 2, you'd still have the Brain Dead easy counterplay that's already in the game. Rancor will apply to the objectives as a whole instead of a singular task, but will keep the last effect. Hex Haunted Ground will remain unchanged. Iron Maiden will remain unchanged. The ranged killers can now get off their knees. Both Discordance and Mad Grit will have entirely new effects. Discordance now allows the killer to gain a token each time they use a basic M1 attack on a survivor. After gaining 6 tokens, their next M1 attack will apply the Broken Status effect to a survivor. The effect lasts for 60 seconds, and after using all 6 tokens, the perk will go on a cooldown of 15 seconds, just for the sake of balance. Mad Grit will activate after you down a survivor. Its new effect now shows you the aura of the survivor farthest from you for 6 seconds. So if the killer is at point A, and the farthest survivor is at point B, then that means that it indirectly gives you the locations of all those survivors that are currently alive within those 2 points, telling you where all the survivors are in the match, whether directly or indirectly, which is valuable information if you're in a tough spot spot and need to make a plan fast. This perk won't have a cooldown, by the way. Corrupt Intervention is right by Pop as one of the best gem perks in the game, and I plan to maintain that status, although it will need a new effect for consistency. The new effect will block one of the tasks for each objective, the duration being 90 seconds. The task in questions being one generator from the generator's objective, one of the tanks for the blood tank's objective, 2 of the skulls for the sacrificial circle objective, and 1 collectible item from the killer's objective. And before you ask, no, it won't have this fuck me up of a drawback effect, and instead there will be no such thing, as my goal is to make killing great again. Dark Devotion will remain unchanged, and the same will apply to Infectious Fright. The only change I'd make to Furthest Chase is dropping the 10% to 6%, yet increasing the undetectable from 18 seconds to 24 seconds, mostly because it'd be a pretty fun perk to put in a meme build. The cooldown of I'm All Ears will go from 30 seconds to 20 seconds. Thrilling Tremors is pretty much fine except for the picking up part of the effect, so instead it will activate after you down a survivor. Cruel Limits will be changed from a generator to just an objective, which means you get 4 separate chances to put your boot up the survivor's ass, although I will be nerfing the duration of it by half, making it 15 seconds instead. Mindbreaker will only apply to the blood tanks and the sacrificial circle, so replace the word generator with blood tank and survivor skull. Surge will affect only generators and blood tanks. The effect will stay the same. Blood Echo is pretty fine, Zancian Tactics is also fine too, and Nemesis is fine as well. So let's just move on to the next set of perks. Deadman Switch will apply to all the tasks instead of just the generators, and instead of activating after a survivor stops repairing or completing a task, it'll just explode the task with the most progress and block it for 15 seconds. Not too powerful, yet still good enough to be pretty viable. Hex Retribution's last effect is gonna go from 20 seconds to 15 seconds, and Gearhead will remain the same. Trail of Torment will have an entirely new effect, in a technical sense. The way it now works is after a survivor successfully places a survivor skull within the sacrificial circle, it grants you undetectable until you hit a survivor with an M1 attack or a special attack. It's basically a gimmick perk for meme builds. Force Penance and Deathbound will remain the same. Hex Undying is not being changed for obvious reasons. Hex Blood Favor will go from 15 seconds to 10 seconds, and Dragon's Grip will be changed entirely, now only applying to blood tanks. It allows you to damage a blood tank and regress its progress by 3%, an action that you wouldn't be able to do before, and on top of that, for the next 30 seconds, the first survivor that interacts with it will scream and become exposed for 25 seconds. Dragon's Grip can only be used twice per trial. Coup de Grace will apply to all 4 of the objectives, with 2 tokens being gained from each objective completed, maxing out at 8 tokens, and in order to get the 80% lunge increase, you have to consume 2 tokens, so you basically do it 4 times throughout the match, which doesn't seem too bad in my opinion. Portal will remain the same, and Oppression will be changed slightly to apply to all 3 generators, causing the other 2 to regress by 4%. Also, the cooldown will be 30 seconds instead of 35. Hex Crowd Control will only apply to 4 vaults instead of 5. No Way Out will take a nerf to the additional 12 seconds, making it go from 12 seconds to 3 seconds. And before the killer mains say this is too weak, I just want to say that this perk is meant to buy time, not make up for your lack of skill. If you can't do anything as killer with your other 3 perks, your 2 add-ons, the killer you're playing as, the map you're on, and your own skill level, then frankly you deserve that loss. Starstruck will only activate after you down the survivor, making all the survivors inside your terror radius only suffer from the exposed status effect. So if they leave, they're safe, but if not, then they're cooked, with the duration of this perk being 15 seconds instead of 30. The cooldown will remain the same, by the way. Eruption will be changed pretty drastically. You still have to kick a generator to activate the effect, but instead of a survivor being down to activate the perk, it'll only activate after a survivor touches the generator. So basically what will happen is that after kicking a generator, it becomes highlighted in yellow, and the survivor that starts to repair it will cause the survivor to scream and become oblivious for 20 seconds. After that, the generator will explode and lose 4% progress. The cooldown will go from 30 seconds to 50 seconds. Hysteria will have a change to the duration, which will be changed to 20 seconds. Also, the cooldown will go from 20 seconds to 30 seconds. Also, Lethal Pursuer won't be changed. Grim Embrace will be reworked entirely. The maximum tokens you can get is 6, and each time you down a survivor, a task with the most progress gets blocked for 5 seconds. This can be the 1 generator out of the 3 with the most progress, a blood tank out of the 2 with the most progress, one of the survivor skulls if that objective is the most progressed, and one of the killer objects if that's the one that's most progressed. And upon reaching all 6 tokens, all objectives are blocked for 30 seconds, while the Obsession's aura is revealed for 4 seconds. Hex Pentamental will only affect the survivor's heal speed and not the repair speed. Scourge Hook Pain Resonance will be changed from 4 tokens to 6, and will only affect blood tanks. Each token will cause the tanks to lose 2% progress, with a maximum of 12% total. Call of Brine will have to be changed, now only applying to chests, making the entity block them for 20 seconds. The perk itself will also have a cooldown of 15 seconds. Merciless Storm will also be reworked entirely, changing the map so that the sky now bleeds red and blood gushes whenever a survivor gets downed. Now you may be asking, what's the point of this perk? Well, the point, other than making the map look good, is every 120 seconds, all survivors currently injured suffer from the broken status effect for 15 seconds. It's pretty gimmicky, but it can definitely come in clutch if you are already doing good. Scourge Hook Floods of Rage will remain unchanged. Darkness Revealed will also remain unchanged, but Dissolution will be reworked, now being deactivated at the start of the match. After injuring a survivor, Dissolution activates, so whenever a survivor fast vaults over a pallet inside your terror radius, the pallet will be broken. After this, Dissolution will deactivate for the rest of the trial, so you can only break 1 out of the 6 pallets with this perk. Septic Touch will go from 30 seconds to 15 seconds, by the way. Awaken Awareness will reveal the auras of survivors outside your terror radius for 3 seconds every 150 seconds. Superior Anatomy will remain unchanged, and the last effect of Terminus will be removed. Hex Face of Darkness will remain unchanged. Hubris will only last for 15 seconds instead of 30, and will have a cooldown of 50 seconds instead of 20. Nowhere to Hide will apply to both generators and blood tanks, allowing you to combo this with the new Dragon's Grip. Game of Foot will be slightly changed, so that only breaking walls and pallets will give you the haste status effect. Leverage and Thwack will remain unchanged. Forced Hesitation and Genetic Limits will also remain unchanged. Machine Learning will have a new effect, now making the survivors repairing a generator suffer from the Oblivious status effect. Alien Instincts effect will be slightly reworked, making the farthest injured survivor from you suffer from the broken status effect for 15 seconds. The activation requirement still remains the same. Rapid Brutality will also be slightly tweaked, as the Bloodlust mechanic won't be a thing. It still activates after you hit a survivor, and still gives you 5% haste for 10 seconds, but will now have a small cooldown of 5 seconds after the haste runs out. Ultimate Weapon will remain the same. Hex Token Play will remain the same. Batteries Included now applies to all the completed tasks and or objectives. Friends Till the End will only change in its duration of the exposed status effect, now being 10 seconds instead of 20 seconds. Friends Till the End will only change in its duration of the exposed status effect, now being 10 seconds instead of 20 seconds. Unbound now has a 20-second window instead of a 30-second window. Undone will have a limit of 5 tokens, and will only apply to blood tanks. I won't take away the first effect, that makes the tank lose 1% progress for each token, or the second effect that blocks the tank for 1 second. I also won't change the cooldown. Unforeseen will apply to the blood tanks as well, and it's meant to be comboed with Dragon's Grip. The effect will stay relatively the same, the only thing changing is the duration and the cooldown. The duration will be 20 seconds, while the cooldown will be 25 seconds. Dark Arrogance's first effect will drop down to 10% instead of 15%, but the vault speed increase will remain the same. Languid Touch and Weave Attunement won't be changed. Dominance will only apply to totems, with the duration remaining the same. Hex Wretched Fate only applies to the Sacrificial Circle, activating after that objective is completed. And since the cost is one of the 4 objectives, then I'll increase the repair speed penalty to 40%. Human Greed won't change. The cooldown of All Shaking Thunder will be increased to 15 seconds. No quarter second effect will go from 30 seconds to 15 seconds. Scourge Hook Jagged Compass will apply to all 4 objectives, and it will show you which one is the most progressed. Forever Entwined will be slightly reworked. The first effect will only give you 4 tokens instead of 8, and the way to gain them is to injure a survivor. The 4% increase will apply to your base movement speed. The tokens are consumed after you down a survivor, resetting all of your tokens back to 0. Hex Nothing But Misery will only make survivors suffer from 4% hindered, but the duration will remain the same. None Are Free will only change in the fact that if the generator's objective is completed, then the perk activates. It's a minor change, but a change that I feel like I need to point out regardless just to make things clear. Haywire will now only regress the exit gate switches if they are at least 70% progress at a rate of 100% for 5 seconds, putting a limit to the perk. Help Wanted has a new effect, now making it so that after you down a survivor and they are placed on the hook farthest from you by the entity, survivors who are not on a hook cannot see the aura of the hook survivor, while the hook survivor can see the auras of other survivors. Phantom Fear will remain the same. Hex Overture of Doom will be reworked, now applying the exhausted status effect to all survivors after downing 3 survivors. The effect will persist until the totem is cleansed. Also, injured survivors can see the aura of the Hex totem when within 20 meters of it. Ravenous will only have the exposed status effect last for 20 seconds. Wandering Eye will go from a 30-second cooldown to a 15-second cooldown. Alright, now it's time to move on to the next killer. Oh wait, that's it. Thank God. It felt like I was stuck in the loop there. Could be worse though. I could have to do the same thing to the survivor perks.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but but she ain't messing with no broke niggas.
You know, behavior kind of reminds me of Fresh and Fit, especially when it comes to taking advantage of their fans from a monetary standpoint. And just so that I don't get sued for defamation here, where I come from, being a piece of shit and having predatory business practices when it comes to monetization is a compliment. And no, my fingers aren't crossed behind my back, but my middle finger is up, I'll tell you that. You can truly see how scummy behavior is when it comes to the Shrine of Secrets, a shrine that resets every week or so and operates like a store for perks of original characters, not licensed ones, which is probably the only good thing about this piece of shit. The perks themselves are overpriced, it's RNG based, so you're better off just buying the character themselves than waiting God knows how long trying to get it from the stupid fucking shrine. Oh, and don't forget that it resets every week, so you may not have enough time to get the shards needed to get the perk that was there before it resets. So how about I put my money where my mouth is once again and get to the solution I have for this problem. The first step is to make the Shrine of Secrets have its own separate window, similar to the shop, where every single perk for both original survivors and killers are available for everyone to see and buy. Notice I only said original because I still believe the one good thing about the shrine in its current state is the fact that the characters that are supposed to be paywalled still are. Next up is drastically decreasing the price from 2,000 shards for everyone to 500 shards for every survivor perk and 1,000 for every killer perk. This is mostly for casual sake because remember, alright, so now that I'm done talking to you about predatory monetization, allow me to advertise the two sponsors of this video. The first is my Patreon, where you get access to behind the scene photos of me editing my videos, making thumbnails, your name being placed in the end credits for all my videos, an archive of all my videos, 2-minute early access to my videos the day before they come out, and Patreon exclusive videos like this one and this one. Oh, and did I forget to mention that it only costs $3? Of course, if you're a cheapskate like me and don't want to spend the $3, then you can always just go to the second sponsor, which is subscribing to my channel and liking the video, as well as ringing the notification bell. I don't always talk about video games, much less horror games, but in due time I will talk about a few of them. This one's coming first though. Since I reworked all of the killer powers, it's time for me to do the same thing for survivors, before I inevitably do the same to their objectives. More on that later. The power of survivors in Dead by Daylight is not their items, but the fact that they outnumber the killer 4-1, or in my rework, 6-1. The only problem is, they can't utilize this power effectively because the game doesn't have an in-game voice chat or chat system, if you're not counting the pre-game and end-game chat. So my solution? Making Swift Space Kit. Now hold up, hear me out. Just because they can communicate that they're bad at the game, doesn't mean it stops them from being bad at the game. Case in point, every survivor with friends that you have gone up against as killer and still won against, despite how unbalanced the game is in their favor. Now granted, do they gain a substantial advantage from being able to communicate with each other, let alone outnumbering the killer 6-1 in almost everything? Absolutely. But it won't be no different than the killer having the advantage of a literal killer power active throughout the match, as well as a few passives they get from playing fair. Remember, I may hate how much survivors complain about playstyles in a video game, but unlike behavior with Dowsy's Twitch shirts, I'm not gonna screw over these survivors just because they said something I didn't like. So I plan to incorporate this base kit Swift system by just adding a simple voice chat and type in chat system that's exactly the same as Marvel Rivals. This will obviously be exclusive to the survivors, and the killers will just have to deal with it the same way they deal with bully squads. Overall, that's pretty much it. Simple problems require simple solutions. Take notes, behavior. You might actually learn something other than the word incompetence. Hey, remember when I said this earlier? Since I reworked all of the killer powers, it's time for me to do the same thing for survivors, before I inevitably do the same to their objectives. More on that later. Now it's time for me to expand on what I meant. This chapter is about the objective of survivors, or more specifically, fundamentally changing everything about it. Now we all know the basic tasks of survivors. Complete all 5 generators, save each other every now and then, and torture the killer if you're in a Swift. But let's expand on that first point, and give survivors more objectives to do outside of the 5 generators. I mean, it would make playing Survivor more engaging and interesting, which, believe it or not, is exactly why most survivors queue into bully squads to begin with. I think something similar to Escape the Darkness would be the best thing, as Escape the Darkness had survivors doing gas tanks, fuse boxes, and generators while running away from the killer. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly like Escape the Darkness, but having a similar execution would be nice, and since I know Behavior is going to somehow fuck this up, I'll just give them the best ideas and concepts to use. They can thank me later. The new survivor objectives can include blood tanks, a sacrificial circle, killer base objectives, and some other shit I can come up with once I take in the devil's lettuce. The blood tanks are advised by my lawyer to be a creative reimagining of the gas tanks objective in Escape the Darkness, where survivors have to refill 1 or 2 tanks with gallons of blood, similar to the Blood Moon event. Only difference here is that I won't fuck things up like Behavior. 4 stations will be set up throughout the map, each holding 2 gallons of blood. The 2 tanks themselves are near the exit gates. Now you may be asking, why do they only have to do 2 tanks when there are 6 of them? And that's because each tank will take around 2.5 gallons each, which will total at a runtime of 100 seconds if 1 person is doing it, and 50 seconds if 2 people are doing it. This may seem like a bit much, but remember, I said in my question that there are 6 survivors. Another objective I would like to add is the Sacrificial Circle, a task in which survivors must gather the skulls of deceased survivors around the map from the former trial, and arrange them in a sacrificial circle around a campfire in order to release their souls from damnation. They can find these objects by simply using their eyes, a map, or certain perks that I'll be introducing later on in chapter 15. I think it'd be a fun tidbit to the lore, and to make it even more immersive, Behavior could add voice lines to the survivors whenever they do find one of these skulls, either reminiscing in a distant memory, or just simply wondering how they died to begin with. But I doubt Behavior could actually do something creative and not fuck it up. After all, they did rework Myers even though he wasn't the actual problem. As for the killer-based objectives, remember how when you play against the pig as a survivor you have to deal with her reverse bear traps? Now think about that task, but on a much smaller scale, and you have to deal with that kind of objective for each killer. Now hear me out, I'm just saying that simple and relatively easy objectives such as finding the photos of Hillbilly's old family, or the pig stash of jigsaw dolls riding on their bike around the map would not only add to survivor gameplay so that I won't have to make other people miserable for fun, but it would also make facing each killer more unique than it already is. Of course you can skip the solution if you want, I just thought I'd put it out there. Okay, let's go over the generators, just so that they're consistent with all of the other changes I made. Instead of the 6 survivors having to do 5 generators, they'll only have to do 3. The time it takes them to be done will be the same, by the way, and they'll be placed in the typical generator locations we're all used to by now. I was thinking of adding the fuse boxes from Escape the Darkness in some type of way too, but I decided not to. Can't do too much of Behavior's job now. Okay, now let's move on to what Behavior thought was a survivor equivalent to killer powers. I mean, hell, you gotta be that 5-head guy to think that survivor items are an adequate equalizer for survivors and not the fact that they can communicate. But I can't say I expect any less from, I think we've done a pretty good job so far. Like, Jesus Christ, you're fucking stupid. And because Behavior has done literally everything but a pretty good job in this department, allow me to fix their mistakes so they don't have to.
He said it! He said it!
My first order of business is to make it so that the 6 survivors cannot run the exact same items, add-ons, or offerings. So basically, if Hattie wanted to run a sport flashlight with odd bulb and high-end sapphire lens, then the other 5 survivors cannot run a sport flashlight or the add-ons. But if they wanted to run a utility flashlight with different add-ons, then they could. Is this hard nerfing bully squads? Yeah, but let's be honest, I doubt survivors would even want to queue up in a bully squad given the alternatives I've given them in this video. My second order of business is to completely remove any trace of the fog vials existing. I want the concept of this item to feel unaccepted in my changes. The reason for that is the same reason I got a NOED earlier. It's an item that helps you substitute for skill, so getting rid of it will be the best thing to do here. And did I mention that you're going to have to find 6 survivors with these things potentially being on the map? I'm also getting rid of keys too, because hatch won't be a thing. Granted, they do open the chests quickly, but you can just save those effects for perks. Alright, now let's actually get into the items that I'll be balancing. The regular flashlight is pretty fine, although those 8 seconds are going to 6 seconds. Sport flashlight is going to take a hit to the first and second effect. The battery consumption will now be decreased by 6%, and the accuracy will only be increased by 10%. Utility flashlight is the last one to cover before we move on to the reason Ottstarva had a 7-minute in-game. The blindness will only increase by 15%, and the duration of said blindness will be increased by 10%. The accuracy will also be 15% instead of 20%. Is this a bit excessive? Yeah, but let's be honest, these aren't always going to be in the numbers when add-ons exist. And speaking of which, wide lens is now 20% for both, power bulb is 10% for the first effect, and 5% for the second effect, leather grip is 15%, battery will remain the same, Tur optic is 15% for the first effect, and 7% for the second, rubber grip is 20%, low amp filament is 18%, heavy duty battery will also remain the same, focus lenses first and third effect is now 15%, the 6 seconds of long life battery is now 4, divide both effects of intense halogen by 2, then add 5, subtract the first 2 effects of high-end sapphire lens by 5, then subtract 10 from only the third effect, and finally subtract 10 from the first effect of all bulb. After that, climb inside the torso and accept your... Can you tell that I'm trying to get this done quickly? You really can't blame me considering I have to deal with the survivor perks in this game after this chapter. By the way, the killer to survivor ratio in this game is 41 to 48. Moving on, we got the medkits. The first thing to do here is to change the amount of medkit items from 4 to 3, as I don't think it'd be balanced to have more than 3 survivors have access to the same item at the start of the match, even if it's all a different rarity with different add-ons. This also applies to the toolboxes, by the way. So the first item, the camping aid kit, will be gone, and what's left will be the first aid kit, emergency med kit, and ranger med kit, all with their percentages nerfed for good reason. The add-ons will also have their numbers cut by a great margin, only in the areas where it matters, of course. Rubber gloves, butterfly tape, sponge, self-adherent wrap, needle and thread, medical scissors, surgical suture, gauze roll, styptic agent, and abdominal dressing will all remain the same, as they're not really that problematic and are still consistent with the percentage changes I made to the items earlier. Although bandages will go from 8 to 4, as a common add-on that will be used by 3 survivors, all with varying levels of skill, should not give you 8 charges. Gel dressings will go from 16 to 12 charges, while the syringe will be reworked entirely, including the name. The new name will be the adrenaline syringe, and its new effect will work as follows. Press the secondary action button while healing with a medkit to use the adrenaline syringe. The affected survivor gains the exhausted status effect upon use for 8 seconds. You can only use this effect on yourself and not other survivors. Consumes the medkit on use. I figured having the syringe give a third health state would be better than the BS that it is now, especially considering the fact that out of 6 survivors, only one of them is going to be running this. The worst they can do is use it during a crucial chase, but when they have 3 generators, 2 blood tanks, a sacrificial circle, and a killer objective they have to do, you'll be fine when pulling off chase every now and then. There are 6 of them after all. Toolboxes are the last item on the list. Toolboxes only apply to generators, surprise surprise, and there will only be 3 of them. The green toolbox, the mechanics toolbox, and the engineer's toolbox, all of which will have their repair speed increased nerfed. The sabotage speed for engineer's toolbox will also be 30%, while the green and blue toolbox will remain the same. And you may be questioning why I would still bother paying attention to the sabotage mechanic in this game, even though the killer won't have to bother manually picking up the survivors to hook them. And that's because both sides can still play around the hooks and the ability to sabotage them, especially the 6 survivors. Your IQ just has to be higher than behaviors in order to see the possibilities. The changes made to the add-ons will very much be reflective of the changes I made to the items. Instructions, spring clamp, and protective gloves will all remain the same. Common add-ons like scraps and clean rag will be treated as such and will have their numbers go from this to this. Wire spool will give you 8 charges instead of 12. Socket swivels will increase the repair speed by 10% instead of 30%. Cutting wire is now 10% instead of 20%. Hacksaw will go from 30% to 20%. Grip wrench will give you an extra 10 seconds instead of 20 seconds. And finally, we have brand new part, an add-on that would instantly do a generator, which all 4 survivors could bring. And if they're on comms and have a skill level which combined is greater than yours, in a game where the matchmaking is absolute shit, do you see why this was a problem? Granted, it's not that much of an issue now, but that doesn't change the fact that it was still an issue before. Now, what I'm about to say is pretty controversial, but it will make sense once I explain it. This will probably outclass the change I made to hex totems earlier being the worst idea I've given in this video, but I'm just gonna come out the closet and say it. Brand new part will be reverted back to its old effect where it instantly completes a generator, but it consumes the entire toolbox upon use, similar to the syringe. 3 words: hear me out. There are 6 survivors. They have 4 objectives to do. They can't bring the same perks. They can't bring the same add-ons. They can't bring the same item rarity. Yes, they can communicate, but that doesn't automatically equal skill. And there's also the chance that one of them gets butthurt and just gives up at the start of the match. So I think it wouldn't be too bad if survivors got one, and I mean one, freebie that gets one of the 3 generators done, since they'll have 2 generators and 3 other objectives to do while the killer's playing to shove their foot up the survivor's ass. Alright, now that that's over, let's get into the survivor perks. Oh boy. I did? Well, let's look at them. Yeah, I don't see anything that needs to be changed here. So let's move on to One of the main reasons Dead by Daylight is so imbalanced is due to the perks that survivors use, mostly because behavior is too inept to understand how to properly balance a 1v4 scenario, so allow me to tell you how to do so with a 1v6 scenario. The way to balance a 1v6 comes down to two options. You either make all the killer perks somewhat decent and make all the survivor perks pretty bad, or you make all the killer perks and survivor perks somewhat decent and then make the survivors unable to run the same perks. I reckon the second option is better since it allows for more balance and variety in the matches. So that's the game plan. All 6 survivors in one lobby cannot run the same perks, just like I said earlier with the items, add-ons, and offerings. As for the actual perks, the reason I wanted to make them bad is because if a single survivor perk is just good, then every survivor is running it, making it way more oppressive than it actually should be because 4 people are running it. But since I'm limiting the survivors on what they can or can't choose, then it wouldn't be necessary to make the survivor perks suck because now there isn't a need to. Note that I'm not just explaining this so people can learn from me and apply this knowledge to the survivor and killer concepts they make, but also to teach behavior on how to actually balance one aspect of their game because they clearly don't know how to. Now let's get into the 150 plus survivor perks in the game. Starting with Dwight. Leader will go from 30% to 5%, although the range will increase from 10 meters to 15 meters. Also, the effect will not persist. Prove Thyself will have an entirely new effect. Now if both you and another survivor work on a generator at the same time, gain a 5% repair speed bonus for 6 seconds. Afterwards, this perk will deactivate until you work on a different generator. Basically, this perk can only be used thrice, only work on generators, and last for 6 seconds. But that 5% is pretty well all things considered. Bond will remain unchanged. Sprint Burst will only give you 15% haste for 3 seconds, and the exhausted status effect will last for 50 seconds instead of just 40 seconds. Quick and Quiet will remain the same. Adrenaline will now only give you the instantly heal 1 health state part, reveal your aura to the killer for 15 seconds, and doesn't ignore the exhausted status effect. So if you were exhausted by the time all objectives got done, it won't activate. Sorry not sorry. Say what you want about me gutting this perk into the ground, but let's just be honest. If you are relying on this perk at all, that's a skill issue on your part. Saboteur will only change in the first part of the first effect, completely removing it since the killer won't be picking up survivors anymore. Iron Will and Calm Spirit will both remain the same. Botany Knowledge will only increase your healing speed by 20% instead of 50%. Empathy will just be a flat 130 meter range, and Self Care won't give you a healing speed increase. Borrowed Time will only grant the endurance status effect for an extra 5 seconds instead of 10 seconds. Also, this is probably the best time to mention it, but no perk on either side will be or should be base kit, as that would only encourage bad players who don't properly utilize the counterplay, as well as allow the devs themselves to not provide a proper solution that would actually solve the problem. Right behavior? Left Behind will have an entirely new effect, now making it so that each time a survivor gets sent to a hook, you gain a token, up to a maximum of 6. Each token grants a stackable 2% increase in healing speed, as well as repairing speed for generators. Unbreakable will need to be changed for obvious reasons. Its new effect now lets you mark a pallet after you use it, making the pallet remain unbreakable, yes I did that on purpose, from being broken by the killer for 15 seconds. This isn't the only survivor perk that involves the 6 pallets you get, by the way. Balanced Landing will give you 25% haste for 3 seconds instead of 50%, yet the exhausted status effect duration will become 25 seconds, because this perk actually takes skill to use, unlike the other one. Streetwise's last effect will be removed, but the first effect will remain the same. Urban Evasion only gives you 50% haste instead of 100%. Dead Hard? Oh boy. This perk will have an entirely new effect, reverting it back to the old Dead Hard where you could use it for distance instead of a third health state. The only problem is that you're still susceptible to traps from the Trapper and range attacks from the likes of Huntress, Trickster, and Deathslinger. Of course, that's just option A for this perk. Option B keeps the current effect, but increases the duration of the exhausted status effect to 60 seconds, and you can only use it when you are injured. Personally, I'd much rather go with option A since it'll be pretty easy to deal with as killer, but since I like skill plays more than easy wins, I'll just say option B is the canon path. Speaking of skill plays, did you see the hockey game last night? No Mither will have slight tweaks to it. I say slight tweaks because the first effect will remain relatively the same, the second effect will reduce your volume for grunts of pain by 100%, and the third effect will make it so that you don't leave any scratch marks behind. We're Gonna Live Forever will also be changed, because of the dying state part. Now it'll only activate if you are already already injured. And when you heal another survivor, your healing speed is increased by 25%, and once you're done, you, yes you the person that's running the perk, will gain the endurance status effect for 5 seconds. The cooldown for the effect will be 50 seconds. Sole Survivor will remain relatively unchanged until it gets to the second effect, where it now also applies to the blood tanks instead of just the generators. For Object of Obsession, I'm thinking you just take away the 6% bonus so it will only be good for awareness. Decisive Strike will probably be the hardest perk for me to cover on this entire list given the changes I made earlier, but I'm still gonna try my best regardless. D-Strike's new effect will still keep the activation requirement, but instead of completing a skill check, you are instead armed with a sharp blade that acts as an item, and pressing the secondary action button will let you stab the killer in the back, stunning him for 2.5 seconds. After using this perk, D-Strike will disable for the rest of the match, and you become the killer's obsession. Also, this last part will still be a part of the effect. Up the ante will go from 3% to 2%, and the ability to unhook yourself will only be available to you alone. Open-handed will increase the range of aura reading for the survivors by 10 meters, but will apply to all survivors instead of just one at a time. Ace in the Hole will keep the first effect, but remove the second effect. Technician and Alert will remain the same, Life will only give you 25% haste instead of 50%, and the Exhausted status effect will last for 50 seconds instead of 40 seconds. Wake Up will only give you a 3% bonus instead of a 12.5% bonus. Pharmacy will let you unlock chests 75% faster. Vigil will be 50% instead of 66%. God forbid it's 666%, and the effect will not persist. Detective's Hunch will reveal chests and totems, but the range will be increased to 80 meters for 10 seconds, with Hex totems revealed in white. Stakeout will only apply to blood tanks instead of generators, but the rest of the perk will remain the same. Tenacity will be active while you're injured, and your healing speed will be increased by 40% when healing yourself. This speed increase won't apply if you're healing other survivors. Boil Over will now delay the speed at which the entity consumes you by 30%, making it take a little bit longer for you to get on the damn hook. While in this delayed animation, another survivor can save you and prevent you from being consumed. Basically think of healing a survivor from the dying state, after which you will suffer from the broken status effect for 25 seconds. It seems a bit overpowered until you realize that out of 6 survivors, only one of them can bring this. Kinda funny how you have more wiggle room to make good perks for survivors without having to worry about them abusing it by simply making it so that they can't bring the same shit. Almost like Behavior should have implemented this change within the 9 years this game has been out. Dance With Me and Windows of Opportunity will remain the same. Deliverance, Autodidact, and Diversion will remain the same. Breakdown, Distortion, and Aftercare will remain the same. Head On will remain the same. Solidarity will be 30% instead of 70%, and Poised will only apply to the blood tanks. Medal of Man will only activate once during the trial, but the rest of the effect remains the same. Flip-Flop will have an entirely different effect. After starting progression on a blood tank, Flip-Flop will activate for 5 seconds. In that 5 seconds, any progression you have will be stored in Flip-Flop, and can be applied to any generator you have progressed for 5 seconds. Keep in mind this perk can only be used twice. Buckle Up will only apply to injured survivors you are healing. Only they can see the killer's aura for 3 seconds, and they gain 25% haste for 3 seconds instead of 50% for 5 seconds. Inner Strength and Better Together will remain the same. Fixated will only give you 5% haste. Camaraderie will only pause the hook timer for 15 seconds. Babysitter won't show you the killer's aura, but it will still give the unhooked survivor haste for a limited time. The amount of time will be 20 seconds and the percentage will be 5%. Second one will remain the same. Breakout will have to be reworked, now making it so that when you are 50 meters from a hooked survivor, the hooked survivor will be able to self-unhook. This survivor will be afflicted with the broken status effect for 30 seconds, but you will gain 5% haste for 2 seconds. Any means necessary will remain the same for obvious reasons, and Lucky Break will just remove the second effect entirely. Now you have a guaranteed chance at finding a first aid kit. Red Herring will remain the same. Off the Record will only last for 15 seconds. For the People will remain the same in its effect, but now has a cooldown of 15 seconds after the duration of the broken status effect elapses. Blood Pact will be 5% haste for 15 seconds. Repressed Alliance activates after 20 seconds of repairing a generator, but will only block said generator for 15 seconds. Soul Guard will have a different effect, now making it so that after the killer injures you, Soul Guard activates. And for the next 15 seconds, if you're still in chase with the killer, you'll be granted the Endurance status effect for 5 seconds, after which Soul Guard deactivates. Built to Last will have an entirely new effect. You start the match with 3 tokens, each one letting you respawn a pallet after it was destroyed. So instead of just having 6 pallets on the map, it's actually 9. Desperate Measures will only increase your speed by 10%. Visionary will apply to all of the objectives on the map, but will still keep the cooldown. Appraisal only lets you rummage through chests 50% faster. Deception will remain the same, and Power Struggle will be reworked entirely. Now you can mark a pallet that was placed down. Said pallet cannot be broken by the killer or interacted with by another survivor for the the next 30 seconds, after which this perk will be on the cooldown for 15 seconds. Smash It will only give you 25% for the same duration, but the exhausted status effect will last for 25 seconds instead of just the 20 seconds. Self-preservation and fast track will remain the same. Resurgence will only activate after you self-unhook, and the healing progress will be 20%. Counterforce will let you cleanse totems 5% faster, but the additional stackable speed bonus will be 15%. Blast Mine can only be used once per match. Rookie Spirit and Bite the Bullet will remain the same. Flashbang can only be used once per match. Clairvoyance and every other boon totem perk in this game will all have this new drawback, where your boon totem randomly spawns on the map, similar to the original Hex totem perks in the game. You also don't get to bring them back. By the way, the effect for Clairvoyance will remain the same. The effect for Boon Shadow Step won't linger, and the range will just be a flat 20. Boon's Circle of Healing will only give you a 50% increase in healing speed instead of just 100%. Overcome will only cause exhaustion for 30 seconds, Corrective Action will remain the same, and Boon Exponential will be reworked. Now after 15 seconds of survivors being within the 20-meter range of the Boon Totem, it refills the charges of their items by 10. Parental Guidance and Boon Dark Theory will remain the same. Empathetic Connection now only lets you heal 15% faster. Residual Manifest will have its first effect removed, but the second effect can stay. Overzealous will only activate after cleansing a totem, and the repair speed increase will be 5%, 10% if it's doubled. Inner Focus will reveal the killer to you for 6 seconds. Low Profile will remain the same. Reactive Healing will be 25% instead of 50%, but the range will be 50 meters flat. Wiretap will only be placed on blood tanks, and the progression required to activate this perk is 20%. Reassurance will only last for 15 seconds. Hyperfocus will be 15% instead of 30%. Better Than New will remain the same. Quick Gambit will give a 2% speed bonus to fill in blood tanks for 5 seconds, but retain the first effect and the cooldown. Potential Energy can only be used on blood tanks and have a maximum of 12 tokens. Fogwise will show you the killer's aura after placing a survivor's skull within the sacrificial circle. Teamwork Power of 2 only gives you 2% haste. Friendly Competition will only last for 25 seconds. Cut Loose will remain the same. Teamwork Collective Stealth will remain the same. Blood Rush now has no requirement. You can still recover from exhausted instantly, and it disables once all 4 objectives are completed. Also, after it deactivates for either of these reasons, it'll go on the cooldown of 120 seconds. Background Player will be activated after a survivor is downed, and you still get haste for 5 seconds. 25% haste to be specific. The exhausted status effect will last for 45 seconds. Troubleshooter and Scavenger will remain the same. Made for this will only give you endurance for 5 seconds, and no, Deep Wound won't give you haste. You already have the speed boost to work with. Scene Partner will only reveal the killer's aura for 4 seconds. Dramaturgy's first effect will give you 15% haste. You won't get an item, and if you do so happen to get haste again, it'll only be 10%. Dramaturgy's exhaustion will last for 60 seconds. Plot Twist will prevent you from being consumed by the entity, and you can fully pick yourself up. No other survivors can heal you, by the way, but the catch is that your aura is revealed to the killer for 20 seconds, and your repairing, healing, and cleansing speed is slowed down by 10% for the same duration. Lucky Star will only apply to the closest task to you. Light-footed will remain the same. Chemical Trap will only activate after you have 50% completion progress on the sacrificial circle, and can only be used once per match. It'll still give the killer hindered, but now it's 20% for 3 seconds. Champion of Light will only give you 5% haste, and the hindered will only be 10% for 2 seconds. The cooldown remains the same. Boon Illumination will only show the auras of chests and hooks. Deadline remains the same. Invocation will take 90 seconds to complete instead of 60 seconds, but the charges will still be reduced by 10. Wicked second effect will only apply if you unhook yourself, and the duration will be 10 seconds. Strength and Shadows won't show you the killer's aura, but will let you heal without a medkit at 80% of the normal healing speed. Still Sight and Bardic Inspiration will remain the same. Mirrored Illusion will only last for 30 seconds. Finesse now makes your fast faults 15% faster, and the cooldown is 40 seconds. Harden will only activate after you cleanse a Hex totem, so regular totems and chests are out of the picture. Specialist will apply to blood tanks for the last effect. Moment of Glory will only make you wait 30 seconds to heal 1 health state, but will deactivate for the rest of the match. Eyes of Belmont will only apply to the killer objective, meaning that after it's completed, the killer's aura will be revealed to you for 6 seconds. The second effect doesn't change. Exaltation only recharges 50% of the item's maximum charges. Shoulder the Burden will remain unchanged up until the last part. Not only will you gain the exposed status effect, but it'll last for 50 seconds, and you're hindered by 5% for that same duration. Invocation Treacherous Crows will have the change I made made earlier to weaving spiders, requiring 90 seconds instead of 60 seconds. Clean Break will be reworked entirely, now showing you the aura of the other objectives after you complete one of them, as well as the killer's aura for 3 seconds. This perk will only activate 4 times throughout the match. Duty of Care will only grant the survivors 15% haste for 4 seconds, Rapid Response will remain the same, and Do No Harm will only let you heal 5%. The 3% progress for succeeding great skill checks will not change. The Endurance for Teamwork Throw Down will only last for 6 seconds, Last Stand will remain the same, Conviction will have a new effect. Now after healing a survivor, if you are injured, that survivor you healed earlier now gets a 10% increase in repairing a generator for 5 seconds. After that, the perk will go on a cooldown of 30 seconds. Teamwork Toughen Up will last for 20 seconds. Come and Get Me will remain the same. Apocalyptic Ingenuity will have a slightly different effect. The slight differences being that you won't need to unlock or rummage through 2 chests to create a fragile pallet. You'll just be able to do that whenever you want. The second difference is that you start the match with 4 tokens equipped to this perk, each one depleted when you create a fragile pallet. Road Life's 100% will go to 50%, 1, 2, 3, 4 will remain the same, and finally Ghost Notes will only have its second effect. Featured game modes is a concept that has been proven to be successful in video games, which begs the question as to why Behavior only does temporary game modes and doesn't have permanent game modes other than custom matches. Of course, by this point in the video, we all know why. They're a bunch of greedy, incompetent, low-tier pieces of shit, and their only contribution to society is being that one kid that no one expects anything from, and proving them right by being a failure in every aspect. So allow me to set the example that Behavior fails to set by offering a series of both permanent and limited time game modes that players get to choose from. And yes, I did say series. The first being a permanent official ranked mode for players that crash out like this when playing the game.
What? How the fuck does he hit me there?
The ranked game mode will operate as follows. Neither side will be able to bring perks, add-ons, or items into the match, and will have to rely on the skill of themselves if they're the killer, and their teammates as a survivor. And if that sounds bad to you, then just remember I called out the root cause of that problem before you even thought of it back in Chapter 8. But just like my teammates in Marvel Rivals, you probably didn't listen to me when I said that the average survivor is worse than a bad killer. This game mode will reward players triple the blood points and iridescent shards you earn by a certain percentage the higher you climb the ranks, the highest being a 30% bonus in both categories once you reach Red Rank 1. This is mostly to give players an actual, tangible reward for reaching the higher ranks, other than just the status and 1 million blood points they get every 13th of the month, which, let's just be honest here, that's the equivalent to $1,000. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's not gonna get you much in the grand scheme of things. Plus, it'll also give people that don't want to pour their money into the game another option. Oh, 100%. If you don't play this game mode, your rank will remain stagnant, but if you do, then it will go up, or go down if you are a survivor main. Besides, it'll separate the sweaty killers from the newbie survivors, and if it doesn't, then I'll just go fuck myself with a cactus. Of course, you could do this ranked game mode by making it so that both sides can only bring items and add-ons, but I'd rather keep things simple, since ranked is all about being better than your opponent, and the perks, items, and add-ons you bring definitely blur those lines a lot more than you think. The second game mode will be a limited time game mode called 4v16. 4 killers, 16 survivors. Because 2v8 was diabolically trash, and I'm gonna elaborate why. 2v8 was like eating tortellini every now and then, compared to eating the absolute bland and tasteless penne pasta of the normal game mode every day. Yeah, it's good, but is it good because the game mode itself was good? Or because it was right next to the piece of shit that people were getting tired of? 4v16 will feature no perks or power-ups of any nature, and mechanically will operate just the same as the ranked game mode, only this time with 4 killers and 16 survivors. Well, you just said it. The chaotic nature of having that many killers and survivors is enough of a change to warrant its own game mode, and make it better than 2v8. And if you want to tell me in the comments how Behavior can't afford to handle that much responsibility in game design and development, just remember you're talking about a multi-million-dollar corporation. They can afford to do better and be better, they just choose not to because it's easier to bite the hand that feeds you. The third limited time game mode will be Trigger Happy Fun Time. Stupid name, I know, but it will make sense in the next 10 seconds. How you win in this game mode is to kill as many survivors as you can as killer before the timer runs out. On the flip side, you have to escape as many times as you can as survivor. You'll obviously be facing other players, and both sides will be on the same timer for 60 minutes. The person that gets the most wins will be rewarded 1 million blood points and 10,000 iridescent shards. The fourth and final limited time game mode will be Switcheroo, in which after a killer hooks a survivor, they'll be consumed by the entity and spawned back as a survivor, after which a random survivor who's not on the hook will become the new killer. The game will start out normally, and it's after that first hook that things will get crazy, and the only way to win is to remain as one of the survivors until the timer runs out. Yeah man, and you know the best part? A 20-year-old college student was able to come up with this idea and not quote-unquote professionals who do this for a living.
They know I'm the flyest, I'm the hottest in the man. I don't smoke, but I'm the highest. I'm like Travis, come again. They all tell me, please enlighten us. What is it that you have planned? I'ma emanate defiance. I'm expanding on my brand.
Since behavior fails at appreciating the creators that don't criticize them as much as they should, it's time I do the job for them. Someone has to step up after all. I bet you all the single mothers got happy when I just said that. I'm thinking free cosmetic items for YouTubers and streamers within the community would be a great start. Similar to the custom cosmetics you gave H2O Delirious and the gang back in 2016. This way they'll actually feel appreciated for what they do for this game. You've done it before, behavior, so I know for a fact you can do it now. Unless you care more about the money your game makes than the creators that support it. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. I mean, you had both Oddstarva and Chandler fucking Riggs in the cuck chair while hackers were anally penetrating your game in front of at least 1,000 people. Alright, my bad. Continuing with my solutions, give your popular YouTubers and streamers a creator code that they can use to make a profit every time someone wastes their money on digital clothing. Alright, I forgot they did. I just assumed that an incompetent, stupid, and borderline cancerous company that couldn't rub two brain cells together to figure out how to properly balance nurse could actually implement creator codes. Weird thing is, they're able to do this one properly, but not the shit that actually matters. Since I don't expect behavior to listen to me when I complained about the monetization of their game earlier, my thought process here is that if behavior is gonna get something out of this parasitic relationship, then Oddstarva should too, especially if that cuck chair incident is gonna become a regular thing. What I'm about to suggest is something that behavior has done before, but not enough of, and that's the Make a Killer and or Survivor contest. This contest should be held at least once a year and last for 1 week. Players can participate by going to the mega thread for the contest on the Dead by Daylight subreddit and submit either image concepts or videos describing their character and perk concepts. Any videos, comments, or posts made outside of this mega thread will not be acknowledged. The winner should be the person with either the most upvotes, at random, or the idea that's the most possible. I'm providing 3 choices here because I'm not quite sure which one would work better in practice. But if I had to help behavior with something else in this video, I'd say go with the third option because there's about a 50% chance you'll be able to balance it. Originally, I wanted to make a killer concept for this video, similar to the one I did on my Reddit account, to showcase how the contest would look in practice, but due to this video already being bloated enough, I'll hold off on that for now, and maybe save it for a sequel if this video gets enough attention. While we're on the topic of toxicity, let's also talk about how I would be better than behavior at managing the toxicity in the community, because the person that's already doing the job clearly isn't good at it if grown adults are still complaining about playstyles in a video game. My first method of decreasing the toxicity is fixing the problems with the game itself that causes some of the toxicity, specifically the problems about the game's balance. Remember what I said earlier, improving this game's balance would significantly help reduce the amount of toxicity the community has. And if that doesn't work, then you can always just go into the comment sections of certain videos and try to understand the perspective of the other side instead of just promoting stupid comments that have no basis in reality and would only be made by people who have no friends, no family members that actually love them, and should honestly just tie the fucking rope around their Like I was saying, going into the comment sections, various subreddits, and consistently trying to understand the perspective of players that play your game and engage with them on a meaningful level will definitely have a higher chance at preventing videos like this one being made than just doing what you're doing right now, because it's clearly working out for you. I hope the people working at Behavior see this video and understand that the last statement was complete sarcasm. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if people that are inept at properly maintaining a game would also be inept when it comes to criticism, which would explain Dowsy losing his Twitch shirts. Like seriously, how hard is it to just pay some people to interact with a community so that they can actually manage it instead of just doing it behind the scenes? Hell, it's almost like they don't actually care about the toxicity in their community and fixing it.
Fuck Behavior Interactive.
Now that we're at the end of the video, it's time for some closing thoughts. By this point, you should already know how I feel about Behavior, but if you weren't paying attention for the past 2.5 hours, then allow me to reiterate. I fucking hate Behavior and everything they stand for, with the only exception being if they're against... To the players of Dead by Daylight who see this video, I hope I was able to bring some very good changes to the game. And who knows, maybe if y'all start another boycott, Behavior will actually implement these changes. But I doubt Behavior would implement the changes that need to be added, and would only add the changes that are easy and non-threatening to their sense of incompetency, just so that they can say they listened. Those fucking bastards. And I'm not willing to disbelieve the fact that the players would just bend over and take it like a battered woman in the 1950s. Lastly, here is my message to any Dead by Daylight streamer or YouTuber currently reacting to this video. Just know that with all the flack and criticism I threw at Behavior in this video, it's been 9 years coming. And you being passive at your size has been what's led to Behavior becoming so comfortable and not only disrespecting you, but also the rest of the player base, as well as disregarding your helping hand on an important live stream, even when you've done almost everything you could to make this game better. I'm not saying you should do what I did and make a 2-hour-plus video on the matter, but what I am saying is that you could have criticized them a lot more, especially after 9 years of the same problems you had in year 1. Thanks for watching, and fuck you, Behavior.
People be doing shit behind my back. My issue with Jim was we working on clothes. I said, send me a PDF of all the ideas, all the young niggas you know in New York. Let me see all of this shit right now. Let the king see everything that's happening, right? This man tells me, I don't know how to make a PDF. That was way more disrespectful to me than a nigga figuring out how to get the $2 million. Do you understand why? Because this shit to my face, nigga. You gonna lie to me about a fucking PDF, you faggot ass nigga? After I sat and took the meeting for you, you took the money and I ain't even asked your broke ass for a percentage?
Maybe he didn't know how to do it.
Do you think one of his young niggas knew how to do it?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think that he could have figured it out after that nigga made $2 million?
Definitely.
Next subject.